Hey guys. This is part 24 of What If Naruto Was Sealed and Woke Up After 2000 Years. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 58. A little too close to the breaking point. Location: the Normandy. Naruto walked into Thane's room and saw the Drell sitting at the table. "Hello, Commander," he said before the blonde could even open his mouth. He stopped and looked at him with a slight frown. "Dang it, I thought I was quiet this time." "You were." He didn't bother asking what he meant by that. Instead, he walked up to the window and leaned against its side. "You got time to talk?" "Of course," Thane answered. "What would you like to know about me?" "I think we've covered everything the last time we talked. I wanted to talk about what was said on the Reaper." "Many things were said on the Reaper." He gave the Drell a look. "I know that, Thane. I was there. I'm talking about the plays you and Gurus were going on about." He frowned in concentration. "What was the writer's name again? Brian something?" he asked. "Brian Phi Mal," Thane told him. He nodded. "Yeah, that's it. Is he any good?" "Yes. His works are quite good, especially when it is listened to." He paused and his eyes glazed over. "And here we go with the walk down memory lane," Saiken remarked. "SSH. Shikaku told the slug. "I want to hear what he's going to say." "High seating in the audience," Thane began. "Voices carry well. Lead actor loud in voice, quiet in words. Fist raised, clenched. Theatrically angry. He does his job well." He stopped, and his eyes came back to the present. "So, I should take in a play or watch a movie of it?" Naruto asked him once he was sure that the Drell was back. "If you'd like," he answered. "I would recommend that you watch the play. It is a fuller experience." "I could tell." "Naruto," Matatabi said in chastisement. "What?" "I was telling the truth," he replied to the Nibby. She didn't say anything back, so he focused his attention back on Thane. "So what did this Brian guy write?" "Everything that came from the frontier," Thane told him. "He wrote romantic comedies, dramas, tragedies, and historical plays. I have read each genre and I have found that he does well in each. Although," he added, "I prefer the histories." "What kind of histories does he write about?" "He wrote of the history of the Empire. Admittedly, he did not write about everything that happened. But he did write of events so well that I could almost see them happening before my eyes. His plays of the first Iron King's life are among my favorites of his play." "Huh, I'll go see that then." The blonde paused when he realized what he had just said. "Wait, plays?" "Yes. How can a guy write multiple plays about one life?" "Just how many plays did he write about the man?" "3, Thane answered him. "There are an additional 3, but he is not a central character in them. The 3 that do have him as the focus of the story are about his beginning, his middle, and his ending." Now it was beginning to make sense to Naruto. But he still needed some details about it. "Alright," he said, leaning against the wall with folded arms. "What would be his beginning, his middle, and his ending?" "Those have a lot of definitions. That might have slipped past some people's notice, but he had been taught and trained by a writer. He might not write himself, but he would notice something like that." Thane smiled a little. He seemed glad that he had caught on. King Michael I's beginning is when he joined the Iron Lance Company, and the days leading to the guild riot. His middle is when he sets out to unite the frontier. His ending is his last days and his concerns of what he has forged. I have found that it is the best to watch all 3 together." "That sounds like a lot." "It is. I have been told that it has been called a marathon." He looked at him. "But that's not what you wanted to talk about, was it?" "No," Naruto admitted. "I actually wanted to talk about the other guy you two were talking about." "Watanabe?" "Yeah, him," the shinobi said with a nod. "You said he wrote about shinobi." "He did." He paused and looked at the human. He didn't show it obviously, but the Drell could see what he was showing through his body. "You're curious about he wrote on you?" "Not just me," Naruto said quickly. "I want to hear if he wrote about the others and got them right." Thane smiled again. "Don't worry about that. From what I know about human history, Joshua Watanabe lived in the Konoha 12's elder days. When he took to writing his plays, he looked to them for guidance and facts instead of books. That is why his plays were excellent. They were very accurate, save for a few touches of artistic flair. What sort of writer would he be if he didn't do that? Naruto asked quietly. It seemed to be a point of fact that writers had to embellish or add something somewhere. Even Jiraiya did it, although his embellishments were more of the physical type. So, did these two guys ever meet? No. Mao was born 150 years after Watanabe. Students and fans of both men agree that if they had lived in the same time, there would have been a war of words between them. There are some who have accused Mao of plagiarizing Watanabe's works. That was nothing to Naruto. From what Jiraiya told him, that happened all the time and there was no real point in arguing. In fact, it was supposed to be flattering. I was told that plagiarizing was one of the highest forms of praise a writer could get, he said to the Drell. Times and attitudes change, Thane replied shortly. That was fair enough to the shinobi. He couldn't say otherwise because he was out of his time by 2,000 years. So just how was he supposedly plagiarizing Watanabe? Do you remember the quote I said before we went into the Reaper? He nodded. Yeah, I do. It was a quote from one of his tragedies. The play was about a man who was a great hero but was cursed to die at the hands of a certain monster. All through the play, he is given a chance by many people to step away from his curse, but he refuses all of them. The quote was a part of his last speech to his friend before leaving to fight the monster. Naruto leaned forward. He was curious and wanted to hear more. What was the monster? Thane shook his head. No one knows. It was never specified. It is one of the reasons why people accuse Mao of plagiarizing Watanabe's works. The whole scene is remarkably similar to the ending scene of Act 4 of the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War, where you meet your father outside Konoha's gate. He had been listening so intently to the words that he almost didn't understand their meaning. When he did, he stopped and blinked. The words didn't seem to compute in his mind. It repeated itself again and again, but still they made no sense. I'm sorry, but say what? The scene depicts you leaving Konoha in the middle of the night. As you leave, you run into a gravedigger and a fortunate teller, both of which tell you that you go to your doom and destruction. When you reach the gate, you are greeted by the shade of your father, who asks you to stop and turn back, that what you are planning does not have to be the way to end the war. In response, you give a monologue to him. That monologue is one of the more famous speeches to have been written by humans. Really? Asked Naruto. Any chance I can hear it then? If you wish, Thane replied, closing his eyes. Someone else might have considered it a bit more than weird to saying the speech to the man who had supposedly said it. But the Drell simply concentrated. He wasn't going to go fully into his memories, just deep enough to remember what he needed and come back up. Does anyone else get the feeling that we're in for some laughs? Kurama asked the other Biju. SSH. Shikaka told him. Thane opened his eyes and began to recite. Do not hold me back, father. Though you are a shade, the blood between us is well enough for you to touch my mortal body. I asked you to step back, to go back your wife, my mother. I know that I go to my doom, as you had gone to face the fox that I now carry within me. You did not turn back, why should I? Look past my shoulder, father. Look at our village. It has been spared the suffering and horror that your fallen student has wrought on other nations. But how long will that storm stay on the horizon before it strikes here? How long before the red river of blood flood the streets, and the ever-hungry beast that is fire consumes the buildings? How long before children run from the invaders, trying to find their parents in all the chaos? If I am able to prevent the storm from coming to Konoha, I will do so without hesitation. People might call me suicidal, crazy, or just insane. But is it suicidal to protect the ones I love? Is it crazy to do what I had sworn to do when I took this headband? Am I insane for wanting to defend the village of my birth from Obito? If they answer yes, I will accept the labels, but still I would go out and fight. I do not wish to see another person die for me. I will not accept that blood on my hands. This responsibility has fallen into my hands and I will act upon it. It is the right thing to do. That is why I must leave. If I was to leave in the light of the sun, I would be held back by those who would not want my death. Therefore, I must walk in the shadows of the night, to stop them before they can act upon their misguided decision. I will go with a heavy heart since it seems that I will not see them again. But I must go all the same. They will not die for me. No one else will die for me. I will not allow. So I say goodbye to you, father. I go from Konoha to battle to end the war. Take heart in that if I fail, we will be reunited again. But for the moment, I would ask you to pray for my victory. As Thane came out of his recital, he watched Naruto for any kind of reaction. For a couple of seconds, the blonde did not say or do anything. Well, that's complete bullshit, he finally said. The Drell didn't look surprised at his words. I did say that Watanabe had put in some artistic flair, Commander. It sounds like he put in more than just some flair. It sounds more like he wrote a scene of something that never happened. I never met a gravedigger or a fortune teller that night, and I certainly did not run into my father's ghost at the gates. If you had, you would have been up in the air and over the gate before he could have opened his mouth, screaming like a little baby, Kurama said with a dry smirk. Sometimes it truly amazed the fox that with all he could do and fight against, the blonde still freaked out about ghosts. And it's not just that, the shinobi continued, ignoring his nine-tailed tenant. I have never uttered a speech like that. Hell, I've never really a speech at all. I do not think that is true, Commander, Thane told him. I have read about your speech amongst the refugees in Suna. It was what rallied them to keep fighting the war instead of surrendering. He knew what the Drell was talking about. But that wasn't a speech, he protested. It was more on the spot than anything. I was improvising. You do that a lot, Gyuki remarked. It's a specialty of mine, he replied. When all else failed, he could improvise to find a way out of the situation. And how does that not qualify it as a speech? The Drell asked him. A speech is something you plan in advance, not something you make up on the spot. But it inspired them all the same. Isn't that the point of a speech? He hadn't really thought about it like that. Then again, he never really thought about speeches in general. He just said what he thought was right, and hoped they would understand his words. There were times where he was surprised by the impact of his words. Finding out that the kid he had been talking to becoming the Kazekage from Hackett had been one of them. Could you tell me of the encounter? Thane asked him. He looked at the assassin with a small amount of surprise. Haven't you already read about it? Yes, but I would still like to hear it from you. As he started to tell Thane what happened, his mind took a trip through his memories to remember that day. Flashback. The refugee camp was placed in one of Suna's emptier areas. It might have been full of life once, but it had been deserted when they put the survivors of Obito's attacks there. Now, as Naruto walked with Gaara and other shinobi bringing in what food they could offer, he saw that it had taken a desolate turn. I didn't think it was possibly to graffiti something on sand, he told Gaara as he hauled a large bag of flour across the square. Kids will manage somehow, Gaara replied. While he was the Kazekage and as such, was supposed to be exempt from such activities, he refused to obey that idea and helped out as much as he could. But still, into sand? Naruto, that's sandstone. There was a difference between sandstone and sand. I know that, he replied indignantly. But it's also got sand in it. The Kazekage didn't bother to continue the argument because he knew that there would be no point to it. He kept silent and watched the refugees. They weren't obvious about it, but he could see the hatred and fear in their eyes. These weren't shinobi. They were people who were forced to flee their homes, leaving everything behind, or risk being killed or worse. They didn't care what the war was about. They only cared about the fact it was because of the shinobi that they were in this situation right now. There were places like this one all over the free lands, more so in fire, wind, and earth. Naruto put down his bag with a huff. As he stood up, a stone flew out and struck him in the back. Ah! He yelped, falling against the bag in pain. Naruto! Said Gaara instantly, helping his friend back to his feet. The other shinobi had stopped what they were doing and eyed the refugees. The Kazekage did the same. There was no obvious person who threw the stone, but the hatred in their fears had hardened into something that also showed their confidence. Naruto removed his arm from his shoulder. Let me take care of this, Gaara, he told him. He looked sharply at his friend. I can't let you do that. He just smiled. Trust me. He walked forward, towards the refugees. They all shrank away from him, but still glared at him hatefully. He didn't care about the hatred. He looked at them all with concern. I won't ask who threw the stone, he told them. All I ask that if you want to throw something, throw it only at me. For a moment, nothing happened and Gaara thought that they wouldn't. Then the moment passed and the refugees started hurling practically everything that they could grasp in their hands. If it wasn't a stone, it was their trash, a can, or a piece of rotten food. Naruto stood there, taking it all from them. Gaara heard the other shinobi cry out and tried to move forward, but he stopped them with his sand. Naruto wanted to do this. When all the things were thrown, the blonde was covered in disgusting rotten food and bruises. But he looked at them all. Have you gotten it all out? A boy ran up him and started hitting him with a brick. This is all your fault, he shouted as he swung the brick again, you and all the shinobi. Why couldn't you leave us alone? What did we ever do? You destroyed our home. You should die. All of you should die. Die and leave us alone. He kept swinging the brick at Naruto, aiming wildly with each swing. But the brick was heavy and his swings were getting weaker and weaker until he finally dropped it. Naruto, in spite of the pain and humiliation he was going through at that moment, looked down at the little boy. Who did you lose? He asked the boy. The anger he had on his face as he had swung the brick morphed into tears. Mom, Dad, Suna, he answered, his voice thick with the tears as well. They told me to run while they. It was clear what happened to the boy's family. They had sacrificed themselves so that he could be free. Gaara's heart went out to him, but not nearly as far as Naruto's. The blonde sank to his knees and hugged the boy tightly. The boy struggled against it, trying to pound his way free. But Naruto held him close, ignoring the fist hitting him. When the boy was done, the blonde said to him, I'm sorry for your family. If I could bring them back, I would. The boy went from angry to crying instantly. He sobbed into Naruto's shoulder as his wails echoed around the square. No one made a move as they all watched the boy cry. The hate and fear in the refugees' eyes had diminished somewhat, but they still weren't completely done. They were too busy watching the shinobi, the object of their hate for all that was done, comfort the boy. As the boy's tears finally ran out, Naruto let go of the hug and stood back up. The boy looked at him confusedly. Why do you keep fighting? He asked. Why do you not stop? Naruto looked down at him, and then at everyone else. Do you all have the same question? He asked the refugees. They stayed silent. Gaara wasn't surprised by that. His friend looked at them, waiting for an answer. Finally, he spoke. It is, isn't it? You're all wondering why we keep fighting when we always seem to be too late to save everyone, why we keep fighting when it seems like the enemy keeps getting victory after victory. Don't ask that question, ask this instead. How could we not keep fighting? They didn't answer, and he kept talking. There is a man out there who wants to destroy everything that you know. Were we supposed to just stand by while he reigned freely over the world? No, we stepped up and swore to stop him. We've been pushed back, yes. We've been knocked to the ground, that's the truth. But we are shinobi. We never back down, and we always get back up. That is why we will keep fighting. That is why we will not stop. It's why I won't stop until we've beaten him and win the war. So please, he told them all, hold on just a little longer. It will end, I promise you. He turned and walked away. Gaara watched them. The fear and hate were gone. It was replaced by awe and respect, none more so than the boy. He allowed himself a small smile. In spite of being bruised, beaten, and covered in foul stuff, Naruto let them do it and was still able to change their beliefs. He didn't think he would be tired of seeing that. End flashback. Thane listened with rapt attention as Naruto finished the story. Amazing, he said when the blonde was done. Naruto shrugged. He didn't think he had done anything worthwhile in that squire. All he did was speak his mind about what they were going through and ask them to keep going for a bit more. It just turned into an impromptu speech by itself. So, he said, changing the subject, you like this Watanabe guy's play on the Fourth Shinobi World War? No, the Drell said, shaking his head. If there is a play of his that I prefer, it would be the tragedy of Itachi Uchiha. He paused, wanting to be sure that he had heard it right. It had sounded like he had heard right. The guy wrote a play about Itachi? How the hell did he get that past Sasuke? Sasuke Uchiha was the first he went to for information about the man. He did his research quite thoroughly and the play turned out spectacularly. It is one of his lesser-known works, but is still famous. He felt a little apprehensive about the idea. Or it might be because of how Itachi was thought of after his death. It was mixed at best and leaning heavily to hate at the worst. And how did the play show Itachi? It showed him as the man he was and the truth of all that he had gone through. There are many moments in the play that he delivers soliloquies on what he's about to do and his true feelings about it. They are quite thought-provoking. Why is that? They speak to the themes of the play, such as duty to the whole instead of the singular, necessary self-harm, and love for family, loyalty even when being cursed and marked as a traitor. I have found the ending to be most profound. It is of Itachi standing before the gates of the afterlife. They are open, but he does not enter. Instead, he asks if this is one trick to play on him, to fool him into accepting his damnation. He believes himself to be damned because of the blood on his hands. His parents come through the gates and tell him that even though his hands are red, they still welcome him because they love him and they knew what he had done was for the best. He accepts their love and walks into the afterlife with a content smile, knowing that now he is able to rest. Naruto listened to him describe the scene and could almost imagine it himself. He just wondered if the ending scene was before or after the war. He didn't bother to bring it up. He was too busy connecting the dots to something that surprised him. You know, Thane, it's a good thing I don't put much faith in reincarnation, he said. The Drell didn't look puzzled at his words. Why is that? If I did, I would think you were Itachi come back to haunt me. Now that he saw it, it was impossible not to see it. The similarities between the Drell assassin and Sasuke's brother were so astounding numerous. Thane just smiled. I know. You told me that once. It was how I learned of the play in the first place. And there's my lost memories popping up again, he thought to himself. He also took it as his cue to leave. Thanks for the talk, Thane, he said as he left the room. But as he went through the door, he found Samara on the other side. Commander, could you follow me? She asked him. I wish to speak to you privately. He nodded. Sure. She led him to the starboard observation deck. He took notice of how the stars seemed to swim past the window. It was a sight that he never thought that he would see. But that wasn't why he was here. He looked at Samara. What do you need? I must ask for your help, she told him. She too was looking out at the stars by leaning against the window. That is not easy for me. If you want, I can wait. No, that won't be necessary. She took a breath in and said, when we met on Ilium, I told you about a dangerous person I was pursuing. And now I've found her. She's been going by the name Morinth. I would like to apprehend her before she disappears again. He watched as she stared out at the stars. She seemed tense, like she was waiting for the chance to leave the ship and go out on the hunt. But just how important was this to her? How long have you been after her? She has been my focus for the past 400 years. It is the most important thing in my life and the reason I became a Justicar. Okay, she's got a reason. He could work with that. Where is she? Omega, she said, a nightclub called Afterlife, which seems a perfect place for her to hunt. He blanched. Afterlife? He asked her. Yes. She turned her head to look at him. Will that be a problem? You do know who's in charge of that place, right? I do. I failed to see the importance of it. Man, Arya wouldn't like hearing that, he remarked to himself. The pirate queen hated being ignored. I don't think she's willing to let me go hunting through her club for someone. If she does, she will face me in combat. Her words carried the promise of the fact that if they did meet, Samara would win the fight. She looked back at him. Commander, I know where she is right now. In a month, she might be gone. This is the best opportunity I've ever had. She's going to go, with or without you, Gyuki told the blonde. Kurama snorted. Why should he give a damn? She's not a part of the team, or even the ship. But she did ask for my help, Naruto told the fox. That meant something to him. So, who are you hunting exactly? He asked the Justicar. You called her something on Ilium. An Artityakshi, she replied. It's a term from a dead Asari dialect. It means demons of the night winds. But that is mythology. She is simply a very dangerous woman who kills without mercy. So an Artityakshi is what you call your serial killers? It had a haunting feeling to it. If they were called that, it was effective. But she shook her head. Morinth suffers a rare genetic disorder. When she mates with you, there is no gentle melding of nervous systems. She overpowers yours, burns it out, hemorrhage your brain. You end up a mindless shell, and soon after you are dead. Okay, that was a grim thing to suffer. And not a single Asari decided to share this key information? He asked. She didn't give an eye roll. She simply turned her head slightly to look at him. When we were primitives, there was much fascination with Artityakshi. Some cultures worship them as gods of destruction. Now the Asari have a place in the galaxy, and they don't wish this defect to be widely known. As far as I know, only 3 exist today. 2 chose a life of seclusion. The 3rd ran. I'm going to take a wild guess and say the 3rd was Morinth? Shikaku rolled his eyes. As if you have to ask, he remarked. She did not nod, but her words were still damning. She ran, and I am sworn to kill her. He considered her words. He didn't know a whole lot about the Artichiachi, but he could understand wanting to run free. He had been tempted to run away from Konoha a few times when he was a kid. He never did because it had been the only home he had known. Samara, he started, if she was secluded like you said that she was, maybe she just wanted to be free. Taking the fresh air, you know? When she fled, she proved her addiction, Samara replied. She was not taking a great moral stand, she simply wants to keep killing. She is a tragic figure, but not a sympathetic one. Maybe she's been able to withstand the temptation. She hasn't, she said with the certainty of knowing. And if she had, why would she? Each encounter gives her strength. The effect is narcotic. The more she does it, the more she needs to do it. She will never stop. She can't. And you go after them like a hunter after a dangerous predator. She stilled for a moment. You make it sound like what I do has a sense of sport to it. Kinda hard not to see otherwise, Samara, he told her. You're going after them because of their genes. Look, I know that they give killer sex that they literally get high off of, but still. It is because of the genes that I hunt her. It manifests in maturity. When one is diagnosed, she is offered the chance to live in seclusion and comfort. If she refuses, it shows her addiction to the ecstasy she gets from killing her mates. There is no redemption for such a person. He eyed her back, taking in her voice. He heard a twinge to it, something that he had only heard when Sasuke spoke about his clan or Itachi. It was enough for the blonde. This isn't just some hunt, is it? He asked her. It's personal too. Yes, she answered without shame. She is also my daughter. With that answer, he got another one. But he couldn't just say out loud. And how many more do you have? 3, she answered. And 3 Artichiachi are in existence today. It is as it sounds. A small smile crossed her lips, like she was remembering old times. Morinth was always the wild one, she was happy and free. But selfish. Ah, geez, Samara, he said, feeling bad for her. It was one thing to go after someone you know, but for that person to be your daughter? And the fact you have 2 more that could possibly end up the same way? He couldn't help but feel bad for her. She must have heard it in his voice because her eyes hardened and she said, I don't want your pity, Commander. I do not accept it. She looked back out to the stars. My daughter's condition is my fault. And my redemption lies in killing her. Do not pity me. Simply understand my situation. Do you know how this all happened? She turned away from the window but did not look at him. I spent my youth on the move, adventuring. I killed people, mated with them, or just danced the night away. I learned so much, experienced so much. And then my matron days came. I could finally sit back, bask, and enjoy my family. She looked back to the window, but he could see how mournful she looked in the reflection. But in one moment, it was all taken away. I'm sorry. She didn't seem to hear his apology. I sat in a med lab while a near-sighted doctor droned at me. And I learned that nothing was as I thought it would be. I gave up all I possessed. I own nothing, claim nothing. All my knowledge will die with me. Now my purpose is to destroy my children. He looked at her backside with a frown. He already went through this once before. If he could swing it, he wouldn't let it happen again. Samara, doing something like that will change you. You have to know that. I do. And I've hundreds of years left to live with that, she replied bluntly. She paused for a moment, like she was considering her words. I say too much. Forgive me. Help me find my long-lost daughter. And kill her. He gave her a long look. I'll help you find Morinth, Samara. But I won't kill her, not unless there is no other way. There isn't, she told HM. He gave her a grin. Hey, we're talking about me here. If there's another way, I'll find it. Hey, Commander? Said Joker over the intercom. Tali would like to see you. She's with the Geth. Geez, I don't think I'm ever going to get used to saying like that. Naruto gave Samara one last look. I will help you, but I'll help in my own way, he told her. She only nodded. He took it as a yes. He turned for the door. Where are they, Joker? In the AI core, his pilot answered. When he walked into the room, he saw Tali and Jinchuriki standing close to each other. It was a sight he didn't think that he would ever get used to. And yet, when he saw them like that without any guns being drawn, he felt a stirring of pride and satisfaction. It was like he was looking at something that had taken long and hard work to complete, and he had done a damn good job doing it. He pushed past it and looked at them both. All right, I'm here, he told them. Uzumaki-senin, Jinchuriki began. We have completed our analysis of the Reaper's data core. Huh? He asked. It's why we were on board the Reaper in the first place, Tali explained. Jinchuriki contacted me and told me that he found something that could help the Geth. He needed my help to get it, so I went with him. You went to help him with something about the Geth? He asked with complete disbelief. Yes. He looked at the Geth. Why was that? We were sent to the old machine to preserve the Geth's future. Since creator Tali Zora shares in the same belief, it was considered a good action to ask for her aid. He looked at Tali, and she nodded in agreement with what he said. The blonde shrugged his shoulders and said, All right, what did you find? The heretics have developed a weapon to use against Geth. You would call it a virus. It is stored on a data core provided by Sovereign. Over time, the virus will change us. Make us conclude that worshipping the old machines is correct. How does that involve you guys going to a dead Reaper? The heretics stored the code in a quantum device Sovereign provided. To find and destroy the virus, we needed to understand its code and data storage structures. Okay. He understood the basics of it. And the virus would essentially brainwash the Geth into worshipping the Reapers, and the Reapers would make them go to war with organics. Yes. Geth believe that all intelligent life should self-determine. The heretics no longer share this belief. They judge that forcing an invalid conclusion on us is preferable to a continued schism. Can you see how bad this would be? Tali asked him. He could, but there was something that was bugging him. Hang on, I thought that hacking a Geth was damn near impossible. You were always bemoaning the fact that your efforts to get past Geth firewalls never lasted more than a few seconds, he told the Quarian with an accusing finger. She remembered those times too. But she just looked at the Geth in the room. He can explain it better. Altered programs are restored from archives, new installations are deleted, Jinchuriki explained to him. What? That didn't make any sense to the blonde. This heretic weapon introduces a subtle operating error in our most basic runtimes. The equivalent of your nervous systems, he explained. An equation with a result of 1.33382 returns as 1.33381. This changes the results of all higher processes. We will reach different conclusions. So, these heretic Geth worship the Reapers because they willingly made a math flub? You are hardly one to talk about math flubs, Naruto, Kurama told him. I remember your basic test scores from the academy. He ignored the fox. It wasn't the time for their usual banter. It is difficult to express, Jinchuriki replied. Your brain exists as chemistry, electricity. Like AIs, you are shaped by both hardware and software. We are purely software. Mathematics. The heretic's conclusion is valid for them. Our conclusions are valid for us. Neither result is an error. He paused for a moment, as if considering something. An analogy. Heretics say 1 is less than 2. Geth say 2 is less than 3. Those are both true. Yes. Okay. He had a feeling it would be pointless to argue the point. How fast would this virus get to you guys? We are networked via FTL buoys. Most would change within a day. Isolated platforms would remain unaffected until they rejoined the network. So unless they would be able to send out a message that would tell the isolated people to stay off the network, you'd be pretty much hosed. Yes. Okay, now he knew that it would be bad if that virus was released. Do you know where the virus is? He asked Jinchuriki. The Heretics headquarters station, on the edge of the Terminus system. We will provide coordinates. Normandy's stealth systems are necessary to safely approach. Well, shit, he said. Tali was confused. Everything seemed perfectly fine to her. What's the matter? I told Samara that I'd help her with something on Omega. I kinda need the ship to fly there. I'd hate to rain on the parade here, Joker said over the comm. Even though no one jumped at the sound of his voice, the organics in the room did look up at the ceiling with a scowl. Joker, didn't your mother ever tell you it was rude to eavesdrop? Tali told him sharply. Naruto didn't go with the rebuke. What's the problem, Joker? We're nearly done finishing the IFF you grabbed from the Reaper. I don't want to risk anyone seeing what we're doing to the ship. They might get ideas. I also must test its impact on the Normandy's systems, Edi added, joining the conversation. It was a testament to the relationship between AI and pilot that Joker didn't immediately start complaining about her being there. Oh great, the blonde shinobi grumbled. So we're stuck here. Not necessarily, she told him. From our current location, it would be simple for you to take a shuttle to Omega. Well, that's one problem solved. Forget it, Commander, Joker said instantly. I'm not flying the ship close to a Geth base, even if it is an evil Geth base. They're already working with the Reapers, he offered as a suggestion. They're not going to be interested in what you did with the IFF. You don't know that. I think he's getting more and more paranoid, Tali remarked. I heard that. You were supposed to. Alternative suggestion, said Jinchuriki. Joker pilot flies Normandy to System of Heretics headquarters. From there, we will fly a shuttle to the location and Normandy can retreat in order to continue IFF installation. It sounded like a good plan to Naruto. They would both be able to do what had to be done, and at the same time as well. Alright, sounds good to me. Tali, you make a squad and go for the Heretics. I'll go with Samara in a shuttle to Omega. She looked at him sharply. Why are you going to Omega? It's where Samara needs to go. Got a problem with that? No, she said with a shake of her head. But it's surprising that you would go there. Why's that? You avoided going there as much as you avoided going to the Citadel. That would explain why Arya didn't know that I was alive, he silently noted. If he had taken steps to stay away, she wouldn't have known he was alive. Well, I've been there since I woke up in the tribe lab, so it's not going to be a complete disaster. We see a complication, Jinchuriki spoke. They both turned to look at him. What is it? The human asked the Geth. If Creator Tali attempts to form a squad to aid us in deleting the virus, the odds of them not believing her are great. He looked back at the human. We see greater possibility of receiving team cooperation if Uzumaki-Sennin is with us. He can't, Jinchuriki, Tali reminded him. He has to go to Omega. At that, Naruto smiled. Tali, you forget what I can do. Location, Omega. He had left a clone with Tali in order to provide her with support. Then he and Samara left for Omega. The first thing that he did was send a runner to Arya telling her what he was doing on the station. It was a testament to how well she ran Omega that the same runner came back only 15 minutes later with a suggestion that he look at the apartment blocks close to Afterlife. There was also a note at the bottom that told him not to cause too much damage in the process. He took that to mean that she cared. When they came to the apartment, they found a woman sitting and weeping quietly. Ma'am, are you all right? Naruto asked her. She looked up and her eyes were full of tears. Are you here about my daughter? My nephew died a week ago, and no one seems to care. The medics said it was a brain hemorrhage, but that's not true. Someone killed my nephew, my baby. Naruto glanced back at Samara only briefly. She nodded. They both knew that they had found the right place. Ma'am, he said to the woman, we are here about your daughter. We've been tracking a killer, and we now believe that Neff was the most recent victim. She looked up at him with shocked surprise. You believe me? She asked. He nodded his head. I do. Oh, thank you. She stood up with a gladdening smile. It vanished quickly and she was back to being sorrowful. It's so hard when no one believes you. She looked at a particular apartment door. I'm all alone now. She looked back at Naruto with a questioning look on her face. Are you one of Arya's people? His first thought when he heard that question was, oh, there are a lot of ways I can answer that. The tricky part was going to find the right words. If he said the wrong ones, he was probably going to get kicked out of the place. In a manner of speaking, he finally said, going with a half-truth. What does that mean? He briefly considered his options to answer before choosing one that he could get away with. Are you familiar with the group of shinobi known as ANBU? She nodded. Yes, I heard of them, but I've never seen one. That's the whole point of the ANBU, ma'am. If you did see one, he's there for you. He could see the fear in her eyes as recognition dawned. Relax, ma'am. As I said, we're here for your daughter's killer. Who are you? She asked him. He paused for a moment, as if to think about it. It was a small thing on his part just to tweak Arya's nose a little. Cammy knows she needs sometimes. It was a good thing he chose to wear the robe and armor, otherwise he probably would never be able to pull this off. You may consider me to be areas A and BU. I go where Arya officially cannot be and deal with matters that require a silent hand. A silent hand? Repeated Kurama. You? Thank you, she told him. No one else on this hellhole station gives a damn that my nephew is dead. If you can do something about it, I'll help you however I can. Then perhaps you can answer some of my questions? Of course, she told him eagerly. Did Neff have a lot of friends? She shook her head sadly. Not a lot, no. She was shy. Spent most of her time off making sculptures, not hanging out with friends, she told him. Something did change in the last few weeks, though. She started talking about an Asari, Morinth. There was tightening around Samara's face when she heard her daughter's name. I see, she said shortly. I didn't like her, she explained. She kept dragging Neff out to clubs, and I'm pretty sure she gave my daughter drugs. Samara, is that part of her control over the victims? Naruto asked the Asari beside him. She controls them through sheer will. The drugs are just a lifestyle. She loves the club, loves the base. She's a hedonist. I'm sorry, the woman said, looking to her. But who are you? This is Samara, an Asari Justicar, Naruto introduced her. She's been hunting the Asari before she came to Omega. We've been working together since. The human looked at them both. So this Morinth hurt my daughter? Is she the one that? Samara nodded. I will bring justice to the one who did this. Thank you, she told the Asari, her voice showing how close to tears she was. Naruto said, can you give us any details on this Morinth? She stopped the tears from falling and looked at him. I never met her, but Neff talked about her like she was a queen. You'd swear there was no one else alive when she talked about Morinth. Was there a particular place Neff would go to if she went out? No. She was always quiet, working here at home. Then, a few weeks ago, she started going out all the time, to the VIP area of that club down the street. I think you need a password or something to get in. Oh boy, he thought to himself. There was only one club that was down the street, even if the different areas had their own entrances. He could probably get in safely enough, but there wasn't a point in risking it. The change was so sudden, she continued. She just seemed tired and distracted when she wasn't around Morinth. She was different before that. She smiled briefly. Oh gods, yes. My neph had a fire inside her. She was shy, but she was creative and driven, and the best girl a mother could hope for. She was creative? Asked Samara. How so? She was a sculptor. Several galleries were interested in her, said that her work was fresh. I see, Naruto said. Ma'am, would you mind if we took a look inside your daughter's apartment? She looked at the door again, her face sad. I didn't want to disturb anything. Her clothes, her art, her sculptures, she explained. Everything is the way she left it. The way it will always be. The tears came back and there was no stopping their falling. Her mascara was being ruined by it. My baby is gone. She's gone, and Naruto moved without really thinking about it. He went to her side and placed a hand of comfort on her shoulder. She will be taken care of, ma'am, he assured her in a quiet voice. They stayed there for another moment. Then she was able to stop her crying and look at him. Thank you, she said. I'm sorry. I just miss her so much. I know you do. Samara stepped forward. I know what it means to lose a daughter, she told the woman in a voice that was surprisingly gentle. I will avenge her. She looked at them both in gratitude. Thank you? Please, if it helps you find her killer, look through her things. We will be respectful, the Asari promised her. When they opened the door to the apartment, Naruto's first thought was that he had seen closets that were bigger. There was barely any room for a bed and a desk to be wedged in. When he and Samara stepped inside, they could barely move around. Look, one of us is going to have to stand outside, he told the Justicar. She took another look at the apartment. Agreed, she said with a nod. She backed out, leaving him to move around. He turned back to look at the room again. The first thing he saw was a piece of paper lying on the bed. He reached out and picked up. Neph, it read, I'm sending you this hologram by the Elcor artist Forta. His work is sublime, but don't stare at it too long, or you may go mad. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, love. Can't wait to hear what you think of Forta. He didn't see any kind of hologram there, but he did see a video journal on the bed. He had learned enough tech to know how to open it. There were 3 entries in the recent days. He scrolled the key up and opened the oldest entry. The video came to life with Neff's head. She was cute enough with nice eyes and brown short hair. Hey, Derry, she said. Cycle 34, Orbit 671. There's a lot to talk about. I dropped Jarrett's name, and they let me into the VIP room at Afterlife. I was sure everyone was staring at me. Then the most beautiful Asari started dancing near me. She moves like water, form and volume, but shifting, changing. I'm in a trance. Then I'm dancing with her. Later, we went for skewers, and I'm supposed to see her again tomorrow. She sounds like a nervous girl when it comes to new places, Coco noted as the video finished. She must have been an easy target for the Asari. She probably would have been an easy target for anyone in Afterlife, Komiai replied. But what are the odds that Morinth got to her first? Saiken asked. Not ones I would bet with, Naruto answered as he opened the middle entry. Cycle 36, Orbit 671. Am I a freak? Morinth is a girl like me, and she's definitely not human. Just, when we dance, and the halax flowing through me, the way she looks at me, with a hunger, a longing, no one's ever looked at me like that. We kiss tonight. She's young and in love, the blonde thought with a small shake of his head. It was a little sad for that to happen to a girl like her. Not only that, but I get the feeling that she was raised in a rather traditional mindset, Shikaka noted. What do you mean by that? Date only humans and males one. It might have sounded a bit ridiculous, especially considering the era, and also the fact that this was coming from the man out of time, but there was a plausible idea to it. He opened the last entry and waited to hear what she had to say. Cycle 42, Orbit 67. She's going to take me to her apartment tonight. Whatever happens, I want to be with her forever. She can sell my pieces. We can live somewhere glamorous, like the women in Venia, that Morinth likes. How did this happen to me? I'm just dumb trash from Omega. That should have been her cue to get out while she could, Kurama declared. She was too far gone, Matatabi argued with a shake of her head. You saw her. If she was going to go anywhere, it would have been straight to Morinth's side. Naruto agreed with the Nibi. When he closed the journal and turned around, he saw that Samara silently agreed with him. This is Morinth's work, she told him. She is attracted to artists and creators. Someone with a spark, slightly isolated from their peers. She impresses with sophistication and sex appeal. Then she strikes. The hunt interests her as much as the conquest. So she thinks she's a predator, huh? He asked. She thought about it for a moment, and then nodded. The comparison is apartment Morinth speaks to you on many levels. Her body tells yours that she'll bring unimaginable ecstasy. Her scent evokes emotions long hidden. Her eyes promise you things you were always scared to ask of another. Her voice whispers to you after she is done speaking. Just how would she know that? Gyuki wondered. I thought that Morinth didn't leave victims alive. Perhaps she talked to the people who knew the victims, Saiken suggested. They've been doing this hunt for over 400 years now. Either way, she knows how her daughter operates, Naruto said, finishing the conversation. So, you've got a plan? He asked the Asari. Storming her den would be a mistake, Samara told him. She will have 100 escape routes planned. She will go to ground and disappear for 50 years or more. This is the closest I've ever been. So you're thinking that we have to hunt the hunter? Exactly. She agreed. Uzumaki, you read my mind. He restrained the urge to tell her that he wasn't a Yamanaka. It wasn't the time for that kind of joke. Afterlife's VIP section seems her preferred hunting ground. You must go there alone and unarmed. If she's trying to tell me that it's going to be dangerous without saying the word, then what's the point? He asked himself. He wasn't nervous about the fact that he would be going unarmed. It wouldn't be the first time he had to do something like that. Me, huh? He asked her. She nodded. You can draw Morinth out. She'll certainly flee if she catches sight of me. But she won't be able to resist you. I've been told that you are an artist on the battlefield. You will have the vital spark that attracts her. Your power will draw her in. And you will be doing what exactly? I will be in the shadows, watching. You will never be alone, this I swear. But you cannot barge in with guns and allies. She forgot the kunai and shuriken, Kurama remarked. I know. It's a little sad, Naruto agreed. Well, what are you going to do? Keep listening. Morinth is far too cagey, Samara continued to speak. She'd simply disappear. This is a subtle, delicate act. Trust me. Trust her? Shikaka asked with a barely restrained snigger. He looked pointedly at his Jinchuriki. If anything, she needs to trust you to do this right. Naruto felt a little bit insulted at that. Hey, I've come a long way. There are days I don't think that's true. Shikaku, I'm not that loud-mouthed little genin anymore. At least, not publicly, Kurama added with a smirk. Hush you, he told the fox. We'd better get going, he said to Samara. We don't know how long Morinth is going to be at the club or even if she's there now. Yes, you are right. She gave him an inquisitive look. Commander, are you prepared to go against Morinth? I am, he replied. Morinth is not going to be ready for me. She has been hunting other sapient beings for over 400 years, she reminded him with a slight rebuking tone. I know. But she's never dealt with someone like me. What is the difference? She's never tried to seduce a super pervert student. And when it came to women, Jiraiya knew all about them. There was even a section on how to, in the man's own words, deal with the crazy ones. Naruto reached the VIP area of Afterlife without any trouble. On the elevator ride down, he did a quick henge on his appearance, and used an emergency ceiling scroll to change into civilian clothes. His face didn't bear any whisker birthmarks, his eyes were a forest green, and his hair lost its spikiness, falling down his back in a ponytail. He wore black slacks over leather shoes while he wore a black-sleeved shirt over a white t-shirt. He might have looked out of place, but he was able to make it look retro. Once he was out of the elevator, he walked right into the club. This was where his training from Jiraiya came in. The first that super pervert had beaten into his head was a simple thing. If you wanted to attract the attention of a lady, you make her come to you. If Morinth liked people who had spark but didn't go with the regular crowd, he would have to match it. Samara was right, unfortunately. He did have a spark on the battlefield. That meant he was going to have to treat the area like it was a battlefield. It was a good thing that he knew that there were more than one kind of fight. He ended up separating a drunken Turian who was getting too hands-on from one of the Asari dancers. The Turian didn't like that, and he tried swinging a punch. Naruto stopped his attempts from going any further than by grabbing his arm, flipping him onto his back, and then breaking his arm. The Turian's scream was drowned out by the thumping music, although a few people did look their way to see what had happened. He also helped get a reporter away from the gang she was interviewing that was about to kill her while also ensuring that the gang leader got the silent threat not to come after him. To mask his seemingly brutal intentions with goodness, he went over to the bar and convinced the tender to give everyone a round on the house. Everyone cheered heartily at the sound of it, and while they went to get their drinks, he walked away. He found a nearby wall that he could put his back to and wait. He closed his eyes and listened to the music. It didn't take him long to hear a woman's voice say, "Hello there." He opened his eyes and saw a dark Asari standing in front of him. She might have been wearing a black leather suit, but he knew that he was looking at Morinth just by the face alone. The similarities between her and Samara were all there. "Hello yourself," he replied back. "I'm Morinth," she introduced herself. "I've been watching you. You're the most interesting person in this place. I've got a booth over here in the shadows." She gestured vaguely off to her left. "Why don't you come sit with me?" He looked at where she had gestured, making it look like he was considering it. He shrugged his shoulders with disinterest. "All right," he told her. He followed her to the booth. When she sat down on one side, reclining into the seat, she was trying to show him that she owned the space they were in. But he sat down on the other side and lounged in his seat, showing what he thought of her action. That would have infuriated most people, but her eyes only sparkled. He could have supposed that was attractive. "Some nights I come here and there's no one interesting to talk to," she told him. "Some nights, there's just one person. Tonight it's you." "Why is that?" "I know what I am," he replied. "Oh, is that so?" She was trying to make him doubt his own words. It was almost cute. "I do. But do you know what you are?" She smiled ever so subtly. "I do. I doubt it." The smile froze, not enough to be seen obviously, but he still saw it. She hadn't expected him to retort like that. Her reaction made him wonder if, in spite of apparently 400 years of running and killing, the Asari in front of him was an amateur in terms of seduction. If she was, this was going to be much easier than he thought. She tried to remain confident in her reclining, but he could see that she was beginning to come off her game. "Why do you think that?" she asked him. There was a small bite to her voice, as if she was trying to challenge him. It was a little cute. You come here every night? He asked. He turned his gaze out to the club with a disinterested look, as if the place had been barely worth his time to come and visit. You shroud yourself in a bubble when you do that. A bubble? She repeated. He nodded and said, a nice little bubble, where everything is known to you and you know everything that happens. Nothing unexpected happens to you and you feel safe. But in that safety, there is boredom. Nothing exciting happens. So you crave excitement. She made it sound like a statement, becoming more confident than before. But he could hear past the confidence and see the question. Not in sterility, he told her, still disinterested. I leave when I am bored to find something else. It seems that we have that in common. You travel? Even though it was a question, he made it sound like it was something to be made fun of. He was questioning her, and that she had ever left the club. It was a dig at her confidence, and to make her angry. If she was angry, she would react the way that he wanted her to. She didn't disappoint. Of course I have, she told him, that same bite trying to get bigger. Why would you think that I only stay here? He looked her right in the eye. Because I've only seen you here, he told her. She lost the fire in her voice and became confident again. Well, then you would be wrong. I have been outside of this club. I have traveled through the galaxy. I've gone to places that you couldn't imagine, where you can see and do things most people can't even imagine. When I travel, I find myself drawn to dark, dangerous places. Why's that? He asked, sounding a bit more interested now. He had to sound interested, otherwise he ran a good risk of angering her and losing her attention. If that happened, he wouldn't be able to run after her. It would make him seem needy and wanting. That would turn her off even more. She smiled suggestively. I've found that it is in those places that violence is greatest. Violence, huh? He repeated, seemingly testing the word against his own tongue. It is the surest expression of power. But there are many forms of power, not just in violence, he told her. There is power in art and music. Indeed, she agreed with a nod. Just take a hearing to the music here. He pretended to listen to the music for a moment. What about it? She leaned back against the seat, arching her back just enough to get someone's attention. She closed her eyes and listened only to the music. Dark rhythms, violent pulses, she said, almost swaying with the music. It stirs something primitive in me. She opened her eyes and looked at him. What about you? He looked to the club again and considered the music. It's a pale imitation. Of what? She asked. Of everything you described, he told her. I don't need music to stir what's primal inside me. If you need music to do that, you're doing something wrong. That remark stung her. He could see it in how she reacted to his words, like they were a slap to the face. And what would you know about the dark and the dangerous? She asked, trying to sound dangerous and sexy at the same time. It worked a little bit. He just found it to be amusing then erotic. I know dark places that would make you go pale and run, girl. She leaned forward, somehow managing to look both interested and angry at the same time. How old do you think that I am? She asked him. He shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't care. Age means shit out there. It doesn't matter how old you are when you kill someone. You sound like you were young when it happened to you. She didn't sound sympathetic with her words. If anything, she sounded like he had just said the hottest thing she had ever heard in her life. That was good. It meant that this was going where he wanted it to go. I've had to fight practically every moment of my life for it. The moments that I've had for peace, I don't go looking for the darkness, it comes for me. This, he gestured with his finger, all of this. It's a sham, an illusion. People like me, we see it for what it is and we scorn it. Yet you're here, she remarked, seemingly smug about the small victory. It was nothing to celebrate about it, and he made sure that she knew it. Had to get a drink somewhere, right? She could have laughed at that, if she wanted to. Instead, she chose to smile at him again. It was a smile that she knew could send people to their feet begging for more. She knew that she had his attention when he paid a little more attention. You know, there are ways to enhance the music here, if you choose. What? Like a drug? Of course, she told him. He considered her words and asked, You got a specific type? She nodded, pleased with him. I enjoy Helix. It slithers through my soul and makes everything better. She sighed pleasurably at the name of the drug. She knew that if he was watching, he would have seen how her body moved when she sighed. But he just looked disinterested. Never heard of it, he told her dismissively. Even if I had, I wouldn't use it. She had heard many people say that before. She had introduced them to the drug and they wouldn't be able to stop having it if they wanted to after that. Are you sure? She asked him. I have some with me. It will feel enjoyable. Lady, there's only drug I use is the original. What's that? He looked disappointed and it galled her. Who was he to look so disappointed in her? What? She demanded. If you ask that question, you've never partaken of it. I thought you were a kindred soul when I sat down. I'm beginning to think that I was more than wrong about that. That remark was enough to make her want to reach out and throttle him. Tell me this drug, she all but ordered him. He looked at her again and this time, he was amused. Adrenaline, girl, he said. I'm addicted to adrenaline. Surprise took her at that answer. It had been one that she never thought of. Adrenaline, she said with a scornful laugh. You use that as an excuse. How sad. I have tried adrenaline and I have found that it leaves me lacking. He smirked and shifted his weight. It made him look like he was claiming more of the booth. That just means you've not used it right. I'm not surprised. He tilted his head just enough to make it look as if he was barely looking at the club and not at her. I would say that you've used it in places like this, or some petty competitions. She had done such things. It was why she had felt like it had been lacking for her. It was all too easy, too simple. What of it? If you want to use adrenaline proper, it should come to you in the midst of battle. It should course through your body like sweetness, and make the sweat against your skin feel like honey washing over you. You sit there and tell me that you found it to be lacking. I say that it has found me wanting more. She found herself angry with this man. How could this human dismiss her as meaningless? She had lived on the darkness longer than he had even existed. What she knew should far outstrip him. She was the herald of what was to come for the Asari. But even as she grew angry, she realized something. This human was playing her, matching her. He wasn't prey. He was a hunter, just like her. The thought of beating him and making him beg at her knees almost made her wet. She wanted to take control of him, now. The impulse was so strong that she almost leapt over the table to reach him. But she constrained herself. Do you want to get out of here? She asked him. My apartment is nearby, and I want you alone. He gave her a challenging look. Lead the way. When they reached the apartment, Naruto knew that she had locked the door behind them. She brushed past him and walked into her living room. She sat down on the sofa like a predator that was coiling up for the strike. Come, sit down beside me, she told him. But he ignored her and wandered around the apartment. It was certainly bigger than Nef's had been. There was a small staircase that went up to her bedroom, a space that looked as big as the level he stood in. There wasn't a kitchen as far as he could see. Perhaps she had a lot of take-in orders. He took in the giant Krogan statue standing against the railing. What's with that? He asked her. She barely flicked her eyes up to the statue. She knew what it was that he was doing. He was scouting out the territory, slowly trying to make it his own. It was amusing and tantalizing all mixed together. A gift from a suitor, she remarked with no great care. The statue's got more personality than he did. Still, he impressed me enough that he finally got what he wanted. It didn't end the way he hoped. That sounded cold, but he ignored it. Just past the statue, he could make out a shogi board alongside a chess board sitting on the table. The pieces were placed neatly across their lines, showing that it was a game waiting to begin. I didn't peg you as the type for board games. She followed his gaze to the boards and smiled. I love any game where your opponent can believe he is about to win, just before you kill him. He turned around. As he did, he saw a small frame on the table nearby. It was a picture of 3 people, 2 humans and a Solarian, and Morinth. They were wearing scientists' coats, and there were hopeful looks in their eyes. What's this? He asked her. She looked at the picture, and her eyes hardened. That is something from a foolish part of my past, she told him curtly. Leave it be. So, that might be an edge against her, he thought to himself. It was best to keep that to himself for the moment. He turned away from the picture and eyed the sword hanging from the wall. So that's not just for decorative feature, huh? She laughed lightly. I was into dueling for a while. She could still remember the flash of the sword swinging through the air, the sight of blood shinning on the blades. It was a good memory. I love the moment you see it in your opponent's eyes. He knows you're better, and he's going to die. He shrugged his shoulders. It's fine, I guess. If you want to be an amateur about it, he added. She froze and looked at him. What do you mean? He strolled over to the couch, flopping down on the other end. He was as far away as he could be while still staying in the same spot. Board games and dueling? He said, making it sound both a question and an insult. It just goes to show how little you know about the darkness out there. You think yourself some kind of predator, stalking and hunting those who you consider your prey? Please, he said scornfully. You're just a teen whose flashing fangs barely grown in. You think so? She asked him. Think? I know so. Then let us see. She stood up and walked over to him, her hips swaying ever so suggestively. She straddled his hips and looked him in his eyes. Her own went black and the air around her vibrated into a more colorful light. Look into my eyes and tell me that you want me. Tell me that you'd kill for me. Anything that I want, she whispered, leaning forward an inch with each word she said. By the time she was done, she was barely an inch away from his face. Naruto could admit that her voice had something to it. Words poured out of her mouth like sweet sake, sounding just as good as the taste it promised. He actually felt a little tempted to do what she asked him. But that was as far as it went. He had gone through too much crap, both here and in the past, to be done in by a pretty little voice that only offered a nice suggestion. He made an easy attempt to gather his will and focused. Is that all you can do? He asked her. She was snapped out of her trance and looked actually surprised. What? What is this? She demanded, more of herself than him. He shook his head in disappointment. The trance is broken once, and she doesn't know how to react. That just goes to show how much of an amateur she is. If she was as good as she thought she was, she wouldn't have lost her focus and kept it going. You were trying to make me a slave to your will? He asked her. You should want to kill me, not make me a pet. She snarled and her eyes turned black again. You will want to be mine in everything. You want to obey my every word. Not in the slightest. Obey. There was more weight to her voice and he felt his control slipping. But he grabbed hold and held it tight, keeping his control. Is that all you have? He asked her. Then allow me to educate you. He didn't move. He didn't even lift a finger. Yet Morinth leapt off and backed away as fast as she could. It was like the very air that she breathed was being sucked out of her without her consent. When she looked at the human, she didn't see him. She saw a demonic creature in his place, looking cruelly down its nose at her. With a look it declared that she was beneath him and was his to deal with as he saw fit. That grin promised many different ways to kill her and each one had variations to it. She felt cold, like death was crawling all over her body. She felt like she was staring into a black abyss that was her life after death, and it promised nothing but pain and misery. She was nervous. She was terrified. She was completely turned on right now. That might have sounded weird to hear, even for an Asari. But she wasn't just any Asari. She could freely admit to herself when something turned her on. And right now, if her loins got wet any faster, there would be a river between her legs. She could not deny that she was as aroused as much as she was terrified. All she could do was look at the man who caused such emotions inside of her. She had told him that she loved going to the dark and dangerous places, and she meant every word of it. In that moment, she felt like she was staring at the epitome of the darkness. This man waded through blood and shadows like they were nothing. He killed without hesitation and without care. He looked at those who tried to kill him and laughed at their futility. It was intoxicating. She felt like she wanted to crawl over to him, just so she could have the chance, the opportunity, to touch and feel him. But as soon as she felt that wanting, she grew angry. She was not subservient to anyone. If this man was the epitome of the darkness, then she would tear him apart and consume him until she held all of that darkness inside herself. Her anger gave her renewed energy, and she knew that he was pinning her to the ground with the goddess's stare. But she knew how to use it too. So she threw it back at him with all of her power against him. Naruto felt his control over her slip away as she directed her own killing intent at him. It was like a black monster was snarling and snapping at him, trying to kill him just by being there. He actually felt afraid and it made his intent slip even further. The monster got bigger in his mind's eye, standing up onto its legs and growing long sharp claws on its hands that were begging to flay his skin. It approached him and he felt rooted to the spot. Kurama, send some chakra, now! he told the fox. Kurama wasn't too sure about that. You realize what's going to happen? He asked the blonde. You're going. Just send it. I need help. The fox saw the monster too. He knew what was happening, and despite their antagonizing each other, he did look out for his Jinchuriki. All right, I just hope you can handle the pain. As soon as he felt the chakra coil inside of him, Naruto unleashed it. The apartment was overwhelmed by the light of the golden chakra shrouding his body. His senses were all firing at a rapid pace, and it felt like he had complete control over his chakra again. He fueled all over into his intent, and pointed back at the monster, and the Asari channeling. Her scream and the monster's howling mixed into one as he overwhelmed them. He forced the monster back away, forcing it to become smaller and smaller. It went from scraping the ceiling to being tinier than a mouse in the span of a few seconds. He sent a mental growl through the intent and made it run from his sight. His job done, he let the intent and the chakra disappear. Get the point? He asked Morinth. Naruto? Said Isabu. Your jutsu isn't on anymore. He quickly looked at a nearby mirror to see if it was true. It was. He was back to his normal self. Shit! Not good. He looked at Morinth, ready to explain away why his face was different. But she wasn't paying attention to him. Her eyes were on her hands. They couldn't stop shaking. Oh goddess, she moaned, what have I done? What? Said a confused Kurama. Why is she saying that? I don't know, Naruto replied. He wasn't sure what to do. For all he knew, this was a trap. Still, she seemed different than before. She didn't look so confident, or that she was like a walking orgasm. The blood, she moaned, the blood on my hands. What have I done? Hey, you okay? She looked up. Her eyes widened in surprise, like this was the first time that she was actually seeing him. You were the one who did this to me, didn't you? She asked before frowning in confusion. No, that can't be right. Your eyes, they were different. He was outed, so there was no point in trying to lie to her now. If she had been the same as before, he probably would have gotten away with it. But this was something different. It was a disguise. She seemed to know what those words meant. You're a shinobi. He nodded in acknowledgement. She reached out for the couch, and used it to stand back up. You did this to me. She was wobbly as she rose, but she didn't fall. You brought me back. A heartfelt grin appeared on her face. She honestly looked glad. Thank you? Now that wasn't a reaction he had been expecting. You're welcome? He said back unsurely. He didn't know what to make of her change. What exactly did I do? It was probably a stupid question to ask, but he wanted to know. He said he would help in his own with Morinth. This was his chance. All he could hope for was that Samara was having a hard time getting through the security encryptions. You silenced the monster in my head, she told him. It's been in control of me for the longest time. I never thought that I would have control of myself again. But you helped me do it. How? How did you do it? He shrugged his shoulders. It wasn't really something that he could be able to explain to her. It was something that he had just done on instinct. The best explanation he could come up with was, I overrode the monster, made it heal. Just by that killing intent alone? She asked him. Her eyes flicked downwards. She started talking to herself. Could it have been that simple? We never did try it. But it couldn't be that simple. It would have been too simple. There must be something else. Naruto watched as she talked to herself. It was like she truly was different. She didn't sound like she was sex on a stick, more like a scientist on the verge of a breakthrough that she desperately wanted to be right. What are you even talking about? He finally asked her. She looked up at him. Was there something else that you did when you silenced it? Did you add something to the killing intent? Why? Please. Tell me. It could be vital. Her hands started twitching and she looked at them with growing horror. Why is it vital? If the monster can be silenced, then it can also be killed. She shuddered and fell in on herself with a cry of pain. No. Not now. Please. Just give me more time. I'm so close. Strangely enough, those words rang inside Naruto's head. They were similar to the same words he would say whenever they got word that another village or town had been hit by Obito or one of his warlords. So many deaths, and he still hadn't finishing the sealing jutsu. He had screamed countless times at it, begging it to help him figure it out. She was doing the same thing but for a different reason. You were trying to cure Artichiakshi. Yes, she groaned out, still crouching down. I wanted to help my little sisters. I wanted to see them free. There was a group of scientists who were trying to find a cure. I heard about them, went to them, offered myself as an experiment for a cure. He found the photo again. It made more sense now. But it also raised a question. What had happened that made her go from being a scientist to wanting to have literally killer sex? It took him only a moment longer to realize what she had done to make the change. You killed one of them, didn't you? He said. You melded with them, and it killed them. She wailed, whether in grief or in pain he didn't know. It could have been both. I didn't mean to. I tried fighting it off, to resist. But the temptation was there. All the time. I couldn't be close to them without thinking about what could happen if I went there. Cassie shouldn't. Her tirade suddenly stopped. As she spoke again, her tone held so much grief. Cassie shouldn't have gotten so close to me. She should have stayed away and let me keep my sanity. Stupid, stupid girl, she said, crying a little. Naruto didn't think that she was talking about Cassie with those words. It was probably more like she was berating herself. You fell in love with her. I just wanted to be with her, to share everything with her. But after her, I just couldn't stop. I wanted to, but it was so good. Her body flinched sideways like it was taking a blow. Oh, goddess, it's waking up. Please stop it from waking up. He didn't know why it happened then. Maybe it was because there was a delayed reaction, or maybe it was because the inhibitor somehow gained a cruel sense of humor. But his body locked up from the pain. He lost so much control that he could not stop himself from falling to the ground with a crash. The pain of the fall probably added to the pain he was already feeling, but he couldn't tell. He was in so much pain that he couldn't even scream. He could just lay there and wait for the pain to be over. Every second felt an hour long and a minute was like an eternity. When the pain finally passed, all he could do was breathe weakly, fighting to get his strength. He looked over at Morinth. She stood up to her full height and held herself like a predator ready to prowl. That was irritable, she said, frowning. I didn't think that was possible. She strode over to his body. You are interesting, but also disturbing. She knelt down, grabbed his chin and yanked it forward. Who are you and why did you come looking for me? I couldn't even answer you if I tried right now, he silently told her. It honestly felt like his jaw was locked up. And yet somehow, she was able to get the answer she wanted. Oh no, I see what's going on. The bitch herself found a little helper. He was insulted. I am not little. Not anymore. Gaki, worry about that later, said Kurama. You're about to have killer sex with an angry Asari. That's not a good thing. Where is she? Morinth demanded, shaking him harder. Did you lead her here? The door to the apartment opened and Samara walked in, glowing in azure blue with her biotics. The instant that the two Asari locked eyes with each other, tension started crackle in the air. Morinth, Samara said with satisfied anger. Her daughter rose, ready for a fight. But she had the first move, throwing her biotics at her. It slammed into her and carried her to the window, cracking it. Morinth struggled against the weight of the biotics, bringing her own to the ready. Before that happened, she stared at the woman holding her and said, Mother. It got her another slam of biotic, pressing her harder against the glass. Do not call me that, Samara said sharply. I can't choose to stop being your daughter, Mother. There was so much hate poured into that last word. Wow, Shikaka remarked as he watched the two of them. And I thought that the relationship between Gaara and his dad was bad. You were the one who caused that problem, remember? Komiai said bluntly. Is this really what you're going to talk about right now? Naruto asked them. Shikaka looked at him. What do you want us to do? Shouldn't you be doing something? I can't move, you moron. He was only beginning to get feeling back into his limbs, but at the moment, it was all he could do to literally shake a leg. Oh, right, sorry. Samara heard her daughter's words, and it only reinforced what she already believed. You've made your choice long ago, she declared. Morinth felt her biotics go hot, and she expelled them in a protective shield. It freed her and levitated her in the same motion. What choice? She screamed at her mother as she stumbled back. Morinth grabbed her in retaliation, holding her up in the air, and then a nearby chair. My only crime was being born with the gifts you gave me. Samara deflected the chair and fell back down to the floor. Enough, Morinth! She cried, throwing another biotic surge at her, knocking her to the ground. Naruto struggled to get back to his feet. It was a slow process that was also painful. He felt like he had a Charlie horse all over his body. But his eyes could not stop watching the fight happening in front of him. Is this what the fight between Sasuke and Itachi was like? He asked himself as he dragged his legs underneath his body. Kurama was of the same mind. It's to a lesser degree, a much lesser degree, but I can see it too. As both Asari got back up onto their feet, they saw each other and reacted. They reacted in the same way, throwing their biotics at each other. The two forces collided and fused together. The end result was something akin to a push and pull contest that had its own gravitational field. Naruto pieces of furniture getting lifted off the floor because of that field, even the picture frame. I am the genetic destiny of the Asari, Morinth proclaimed. But they are not ready to reveal to this, so I must die. Okay, now she's just having a monologue, Gyuki said disdainfully. If there was one thing that could lose attention, it was someone having a monologue. You are a disease to be purged, nothing more, Samara replied. Their struggle only lasted a few more seconds before she decided to end it. It was something that she had learned from her most recent student. While her one hand was busy, she used the other to flick a small biotic burst at Morinth's legs. It collided and sent the Artityakshi to the ground. When she looked up, she saw the Justicar coming towards her. Fear crawled up from that dark place, telling her to run. She crawled away, trying to put some distance between them. But it wasn't far or fast enough. Samara caught her by the throat. Find peace in the embrace of the goddess, she declared. Samara, stop! Shouted Naruto suddenly. Both Asari looked his way as he fought his way back to a leaning position against the couch. Don't do this. I must, Commander, she told him. She cannot be allowed to live any longer. That's not your daughter. It's the Artityakshi in control. She's still in there. I talked to her only minutes before. But she would not be moved from her position. She must die. Whether she is the Artityakshi or my daughter, it makes no difference. He tried to get back to his feet, but it was slow going. His legs liked the fact that they were sitting down and didn't want to move. I know the reason why she ran, he called out. It wasn't so she could go killing. She ran because she wanted to help her sisters. She was trying to find a way to cure being an Artityakshi. Impossible, Samara dismissed immediately. There is no cure for an Artityakshi. It has been searched for longer than the humans ever ascended into space. It does not exist. She never looked away from her daughter's eyes. They were angry and full of hate. There's a chance it might, Naruto said, almost desperately. I was able to bring her back with my killing intent. I silenced the monster in her. If it can be silenced, it can also be killed. Don't you want that? Don't you want to have your daughters back with you? He poured every amount of conviction and hope that he had into his voice. He had seen what happened with Morinth. She had changed. It was possible for the change to be permanent. There didn't have to be this kind of killing anymore. He looked at the Justicar, waiting for her to say something. She closed her eyes and he hoped that she was wavering. It's a nice dream, Commander, she told him, her voice holding a whisper of hope and longing. But then her eyes opened. They were unyielding and resolute. But I can't afford such dreams. Mother, Morinth tried to say. It only got her windpipe tightened. I told you to not call me that, her mother said with no emotion. No! Naruto cried out. But it was too late. Samara snapped her daughter's neck without hesitation. It was only then that his body decided his session with pain was over, and he had full control over it again. He quickly went over to Morinth's body, but he already knew that it was too late. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it! He whipped his head around to look at Samara. Why did you do that? He demanded. It had to be done, she replied, as calm and controlled as ever. Hearing that voice only made him angrier. She was your daughter, Samara. There was a chance that she could have been saved. I could have saved her. She stood there like a blue statue, emotionless and unfeeling. Can we take you, Samara? Are you not going to say anything about what you just did? She looked at him, seeing his anger, and replied, What do you think I will say? What can I say? I just killed the bravest and smartest of my daughters. There are no words. She sounded remorseful, maybe. But she had still done it in cold blood. She could have been saved. She shook her head. No, she could not. She had to die. He was enraged by the calmness of her words. It reminded him too much of the people who would judge the causalities for being high or low without even meeting the men and seeing their faces. He had hated those people. They had never seen the war beyond the strategy meetings. And here she was, dismissing the fact that her daughter could have been saved like it never could have happened. We're done, he told her. Indeed, she replied, already turning for the door. Let us leave. No, I mean we're done, Samara. She stopped and looked back at him. I do not understand. He walked up to her, getting into her face. Then let me put it to you this way, find your own transport off Omega. You are not getting back on my ship. She did not flinch from the venom in his voice or the hatred that was covering. She stepped back away from him and said, if that is what you command, I will do so. Goodbye, Naruto Uzumaki. May we meet in better times. He kept his angry gaze on her back as she walked out the door. Even after the door closed, he kept staring at it, like he was hoping it would burn from the hate and outrage he was throwing at it. But after another minute, the hate stopped. He turned around and walked back to Morintha's body. He knelt down beside her and closed her eyes. I'm sorry, he told her. Suddenly, he just felt drained. It was more than feeling drained of anger and hate. He felt exhausted of everything that had happened ever since he woke up in that lab. Why was he doing this? It felt like he was just running around in circles. Everyone else seemed to have an edge on him, and he was only getting past them by sheer luck. And there were his memories. What the hell was he doing that required him to lose his memories? What was with all the secrecy? It was slowly driving him nuts and leaving him tired. He needed a break. He stood up again, sent a quick message to people on Omega he knew would take care of the body, and walked out of the apartment. He knew where to go, and at this point, he didn't care if he was risking his life. When Arya was told that someone had walked right into her home, she didn't panic. There were only a few who knew where she lived, even fewer who had been inside it, and only one person who would dare just walk in. So she chose to go home, resolved to throw Naruto Uzumaki out a window for what he did. That had been her intentions all the way up to walking through the front door. But then she saw something that made her stop short. Naruto was lounging on the couch watching something on the screen, but he wasn't alone. Kagaya sat in his lap and was giggling at the cartoons on the screen. Alright, you've got to explain this to me, kiddo, Naruto said, frowning slightly. I'm trying to understand this, but I am missing something. SSH, Daddy, Kagaya told him without tearing her attention away from the screen. Come on, Kagaya. Help your old man out here. SSH. She told him again, more sternly this time. He shrugged his shoulders in surrender. Alright, fine. But it's going to be on you. She ignored him still in favor of the screen. One of the cartoons fell on its face and she giggled. There was a smile on his lips. Arya waited until the cartoon was finally over before making herself known. I see you're making yourself comfortable, she said loudly enough for them both to hear. They both turned their heads and saw her standing there with folded arms. Kagaya smiled brightly and reached out with her little chubby hands. Mommy! She cried out. Naruto stood up with her in his arms and walked over to Arya. Hello, dear, he said with the warmth of seeing her again. How was your day running the station? There was no one who dared talk to her like that, like she was some wife that came back from work. But then she saw the grin on his lips and she realized what he was doing. He was playing with her, seeing if she could catch on. Well, if that's the way he wants to play this, then fine, she thought to herself. It was the same as any day, she replied indifferently. Running the club, making sure trades went smoothly, making sure that my customers were satisfied with my services. She had often used that line on previous lovers to see how they would react. It would either complete cluelessness about or outrage about the implication. If it was either one of those, that lover didn't stay a lover longer afterwards. But very few of them used humor for a reply. Well, you work hard, Arya, he replied. If those guys don't like your services, clearly they don't know how to handle a woman like you. She didn't respond to his words, but she did give him a short nod of her head. Well turned. Mommy! Said an insistent Kagaya, stretching out for her. Naruto laughed. Alright, here's Mommy. Arya reached out and took her daughter. Kagaya nestled against her shoulder and started babbling about what happened. Half of it was baby talk and the half were basic words that didn't make sense at that moment. But she didn't care. Having her daughter in her arms was a comforting feeling that was always welcomed. Kagaya was a light and a joy in the dark, stinking world that was Omega. But she looked at Kagaya's father, and that feeling was replaced with irritation and tightly controlled anger. I told you that you were never to see her again. I'm aware, he replied. And yet you decided to show up here, again, without my permission. If I had asked for your permission, you would have said no and had me thrown out a window. I'm still tempted to do that, she warned him. She didn't raise her voice or growl out the words. She didn't have to. If she wanted her words to sound dangerous, the smart ones would realize it and tread lightly. The dumb ones would end up dead quickly. But he wasn't either of them. He was more of a mixture that just refused to die. Not in front of the kid, he told her, looking down at Kagaya. She did too. Kagaya was looking up at them with a big grin on her face. She loved them both. Fine, not in front of her, Arya agreed. Afterwards, though, that will be decided. Okay, but it'll have to be after dinner. I'm cooking something good. Ramen? She asked. He frowned irritably at her. Be serious, Arya, he told her. You expect her to eat ramen now? I am not going to give her a bad habit this early in her life. Even though it was surprising to hear those words from him, she did not show her surprise. She had survived enough to know not to do that. Coming from the ramen lover himself is something, she told him. Yeah, well, things change. You should know. Those meals I cooked weren't ramen, were they? He wasn't wrong. There were plenty of other times that we had ramen. They usually involved the screen and the couch. Today is not one of those days, he said firmly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to get the stuff going. He turned around and went straight for the kitchen. But Arya wasn't done with him, not yet. She took Kagaya back to the screen and started up another cartoon for her. She didn't realize that she had put on an old favorite of hers until it started playing. Seeing the cartoon play made her stop and watch for a few minutes. Those few minutes become a few minutes more, and then she ended sitting on the couch watching it with her daughter beside her. She looked over at Naruto about halfway through the cartoon and remembered what she was trying to do. She got up from the couch, promising Kagaya that she would be back, and made her way over to the kitchen. What are you doing here, Naruto? She demanded. He paused in cutting a vegetable. I'm cooking dinner, Arya. I'm not talking about that. You promised that you would never come back here again. I didn't promise anything. You shoved it down my throat before I could make any good arguments, he retorted. His face became somber as the small anger left. Besides, I wouldn't have come here if it wasn't serious. What is so serious? Me, Arya, he replied. I'm getting tired of running around, doing the Akatsuki's work, avoiding both the tribe and the collectors, and trying to figure out what happened to my 2 missing years. I just wanted one night to stop and breathe a little, relax. She wasn't sympathetic at all to his woes. It's called hiring a prostitute and fucking her until you can't anymore, she replied bluntly. He looked at her with a hard expression. Arya, have you ever known me to do that? He asked her. She had to admit that it wasn't. If there was ever a prostitute who dared come up to him and flirted with him in her presence, he stopped her from making them paste on the wall. She had also gotten reports of him talking to them like they were actually people instead of following them to a nearby alleyway or bedroom. He continued his cutting but also looked wistfully over at the couch. Besides, I wanted the chance to know this feeling at least once before I potentially die. Kagaya laughed brightly and it made him smile. She kept her eyes on him. The smile was endearing but she couldn't focus on that. What feeling? She demanded. The feeling of having an actual family, he told her while he scooped up the cut vegetable and put in the pan. I wanted to spend some time with my baby girl and be an actual father to her. He looked at her meaningfully. Do you understand what I'm saying? She did. Despite what she was now, she was born into a family that had loved her and cherished her. She knew the feeling of comfort it had given her when she was young, before it became choking and she ran away. But that feeling was still there and it was here with Kagaya. She also knew of how Naruto grew up an orphan. He never had that feeling. I am still tempted to kick you out of my house, she told him. He gestured to the stove. With dinner half cooked? He asked her. Come on, Arya. Not even you would do that. You're walking on dangerous ground here, Naruto. He lost the incredulous look on his face. Instead, he became serious. Arya, I'm not asking you for much. I'm not even trying to get into your bedroom so we can plow each other into the sheets. All I'm asking is for one night to be an actual parent to my daughter and forget everything that is happening around me. She kept a steady look on him. He wasn't lying, she could see it. It was one of the things that she enjoyed having Naruto as a lover. He didn't get disappointed when she wanted to do something outside of sex, and he was never able to give her a boring conversation. He was also sincere and willing to trust her. It was something that she still got surprised by, being trusted without the fear of getting crushed by her anger. Fine, she surrendered. One night, you can stay for one night. But I want you gone in the morning. After breakfast, he retorted. I'm not leaving without saying goodbye to Kagaya. That was a promise he intended to keep. She didn't see the point in arguing with him about that. Fine, she agreed. He smiled honestly and sincerely again. Thank you, Arya. He went back to cooking and she went back to Kagaya. The rest of the evening was spent in a fashion that was typical for others but not for them. They had an ordinary family time. The meal was soon done, and they all sat at the table to eat. When the meal was done, Naruto went to clean the dishes and Arya took Kagaya for a bath. They watched a third cartoon together when they were done. Kagaya started to fade during the cartoon, so Naruto took her to bed and tucked in her. He walked out of her room and back to Arya. They watched the rest of the cartoon and another movie before they stopped. He offered to sleep on the couch, but she took his hand and walked him into her room. As he found out, she had been lying. It was a rather stressful day for her. Codex entry: Historical Founders of Nations. Sub-entry: Midgardian History. In the ancient days before the High Jarl, the Midgardian people were a very contentious collection of tribes ruled by the Jarls. Of these people, the sagas tell of one man that had the ambition to become king of Midgard. Ragnar Lodbrok was a semi-legendary man that was equally as respected as he was feared, claiming to have been descended from Odin himself. Nobody knows his origins, but different sagas generally agree that he was once a lowly farmer and raider that gradually became Jarl of his village. Ragnar was credited with raids on new lands, and was responsible for bringing new slaves and loot to his people. He was respected by the people as a sign that one could change their destiny, that if they had enough ambition and the gods favored them, they could rise as quickly as he did. Tales of his deeds were so widespread that he managed to gather several other Jarls under his banner. Unfortunately, once ambition takes hold, there is no turning back. The sagas never recorded why it was so, but Ragnar began to attack nearby villages in a newfound goal to unite Midgard under his banner as king. Some say the loss of a personal friend, who Ragnar supposedly claimed was the stone where his conscience would find peace, drove him into madness. Others say he'd been tricked by Loki into killing his friend. But all sources agree that ambition was a driving force in his conquest. In his attempt to conquer Midgard, several men would ally with each other to form an army to oppose Ragnar's ambition. Each had been personally harmed by Ragnar before the alliance was made. Bjorn lost a duel against Ragnar, who then humiliated him by injuring his skin to the point of it almost being flayed. Afterwards he wore plate armor over his hauberk so that humiliation would never happen again, earning the name of Ironside. Sigurd was once a loyal man of Ragnar but had his eye torn out by a snake held by Ragnar, supposedly for being an ill omen to the army. He survived and became known as Snake Eye, or Snake and Eye. The Smithy brothers Vitsurk, Ub, and Halfdan did not suffer as much physical harm, but were publicly humiliated by Ragnar for being dwarves after he refused to take the armor he had commissioned from them. Ivar the Halfman was allegedly the only student Ragnar took and survived being cut in half by him after a disagreement about the war turned violent. All 6 men united against Ragnar, and together they learned from a man they claimed to be Heimdall, the guardian of the Bifrost, and became known as the Blades of Heimdall. However, due to studies made after the creation of the Human Alliance, it is widely believed that the 6 were trained by the Rikudo Sinin. The sagas repute that the war between the armies of Ragnar Lodbrok and the Blades was so great it was as if Ragnarok had begun. Due to the fact that the sagas are prone to embellish details, it is questionable as to the actual extent of the war itself was. However, ancient maps of Midgard have shown that it had once larger in landmass. Due to this war and the destruction it caused, Ragnar Lodbrok has become known as the Herald of Ragnarok. In the last great battle, Ragnar Lodbrok met the Blades on the field. It was said that in addition to being a man of great charisma, he was already a very formidable fighter and a very shrewd tactician and strategist, enough that he was able to match all 6 of them in combat. The details of the fight were lost to history, and the sagas argue as to what exactly happened, But all accounts agree on 2 points: that the battle began when Ragnar Lodbrok demanded who wants to be king of the Blades, and he was defeated in battle by the Blades, losing his life when Ivar managed to throw himself at him, stabbing him through his heart. He died on the battlefield, but his death fractured Midgard. Without Ragnar Lodbrok, the Blades turned on themselves and began fighting each other for land and control. It is often said the question he asked of them was the reason for their broken brotherhood. Their fighting would split the land into 6 territories. They became the official jarldoms of Midgard and were still referred to as such even after they broke into smaller jarldoms. Each blade would claim a jarldom for his own. After their deaths, they became known as the ancestors of Midgard, see, the ancestors. It would be generations before the ambition to unite Midgard would fall to the hands of High Jarl Vidar Blackforest, who ironically was the descendant of Ragnar Lodbrok, descended from the man's daughter and his only child. Since then, the tale of Ragnar Lodbrok has been used as a cautionary tale. Ambition is a fire that must be tended to carefully. Too little ambition leads to a miserable life. Too much ambition leads to Ragnarok. Chapter 59. We have to do what now? Location: the Normandy. It was all quiet on the ship. Everyone was doing their jobs, and they weren't trying to outrun a tribe ship or avoid the collectors. It was a day where they could relax a little bit and enjoy the air. Of course, the people who were off shift were doing just that. The people on shift were working and making sure that the Normandy stayed alive. Musashi saw that in how everyone on the bridge were at their stations as he walked towards the cockpit, their eyes focused on the screens in front of them. They do a good job, he thought to himself with approval. He thought good of people who did hard work at what they did. He had been the same way. His mother might have inflicted it on him, but it had a lasting effect. He reached the cockpit and said, "Hey, Joker." The pilot ignored him in favor of the screen and the hologram of the blue orb. "I'm telling you, EDI, your readings are off," he told the AI beside him. "It's radiation bleed, just white noise." "I have detected a signal in the static," EDI replied. "We are transmitting the Normandy's location." "Transmitting? To who?" he asked. "Should I come back later?" Musashi asked, daring to speak aloud then. Joker looked around his seat to see who it was talking. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of him. "Musashi, what are you doing up here?" he asked. "Came up here to check on you," he replied. "The crew thought you were arguing with EDI again." "I can see that was true. We're fine, just a little disagreement. Still, I would have thought you had gone with Talia on that mission." He shook his head. "No, both Quan Misli and I decided not to. He wanted to have some time to practice his katas, and the hunter decided to go over her explosives and check to see if there was any that were needed." "Well, if there is nothing else you need, do you mind if I get back to work here?" "Don't mind me." Joker turned back to the keyboard. He placed his fingers on it but instantly drew them back when he got a shock. "Ah, fuck!" he groused, rubbing his fingers to get feeling back in them and glaring at the orb. "EDI, you didn't have to shock me to get your point across." "That wasn't me, Mr. Moreau," the AI replied. The screens went dead instantly. Musashi heard the cries of surprise from behind him, but he was more worried about the fact that Joker wasn't doing anything to fix the problem. "What happened?" "The system went down," the pilot told him. "We're basically dead in the water." "EDI, what's going on here?" The cockpit darkened suddenly, but the lights were still on. Both the pilot and the ex-cop looked up to see what it was outside. They saw the collector's ship right above them, close enough to board them. "Oh shit!" Musashi agreed with the sentiment. He saw that the collector's ship was turning more into sight. But then he realized that it wasn't the collector's ship that was turning, it was the Normandy. "They've got us," he said. "They're pulling us in." Joker managed to get the keyboard back on and instantly went to work. "We're getting out of here." Musashi held hope that would be true, but that hope fell dead when EDI declared, "The propulsion systems are disabled. I'm detecting a virus in the ship's computers." "From the IFF?" he demanded pointlessly. "Damn it, why didn't you scrub it?" "Joker, is the intercom still operational?" Musashi asked. "As far as I can tell," he replied, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Open it across the ship." The pilot did exactly that and then gave him the thumbs up. He started right away. "Red alert! Red alert! This is Musashi. The collectors have found us and we're about to be boarded. All crew, grab a weapon and take defensive positions. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. We are under attack. Stand ready to repel boarders. Joker closed off the comm, but it still looked grim. Primary defenses are still offline, EDI informed them. We can save the Normandy, Mr. Moreau, but you must help me. Give me the ship. What? You're crazy, he proclaimed. You start singing Daisy Bell and I'm done. Despite the situation, Musashi frowned and thought. Isn't that a song from a movie? He asked himself. The movie might have been famous, but he could not remember it. The ship shook and he almost lost his footing. Now isn't the time for these kinds of questions. Idia was still determined to go through with the course of action she had thought of. Unlock my sealed databases, and I can initiate countermeasures. The maintenance shaft in the science lab will allow passage to the AI core. The ship shook again, harder than the last time. Then it went still and everything became silent. It was the kind of silence that sent a nervous chill down people's backs because they knew it was the calm before the storm. Musashi listened for what came next. He heard metal tearing and people screaming in defiance. Gunfire started up, but those screams quickly turned into fear. It started. Main corridors are no longer safe. The collectors have boarded. Yeah, he said that already, EDI, Joker said. But even as he said it, he was trying to get out of his chair. As soon as he was out, lights on the floor started blinking red. It went down the length of the command deck. The emergency floor lighting will guide you, Mr. Moreau. He knew that it would, but it was still terrifying to him. When it came to saving everyone's bacon, he did it from the cockpit. He was the pilot, for the love of the saints. Not to mention the last time that he had gone up against these guys this close. Not only had he lost, but he lost the ship too. And he wasn't even considering his condition. Still, what had to be done had to be done. That didn't he had to like it. Ah, damn it, he muttered when he realized just where he had to go. Don't worry, Joker, Musashi said. I'll be here to protect you. It was a good thing that he had grabbed his Bakken before coming to the cockpit. It wouldn't be as effective as his guns, but they would still have protection. He led the way with Joker behind him. The pilot's fear and adrenaline were running at an all-time high. Shit, he said to himself, trying to will his body to move faster than it should. When they reached the map area, the path turned to the left towards the door into the science lab. Musashi saw that there were 3 crewmen standing watching the elevator. He opened his mouth to call out to them, but the elevator door was forced open. On the other side came a creature that looked vaguely like a collector, only more monstrous looking. Hades' darkness, one of the crewmen said in shocked horror. What is that thing? Does it matter? The second crewman asked her, his gun already firing. Just shoot the damn thing already. She followed his idea and opened fire. The third crewman did the same. They kept the thing in place while Musashi and Joker went for the door. The third looked their way and shouted, We'll hold it off as long as we can. Hurry, Joker. Go. Turn your head back. Musashi shouted at him. But it was too late. When his attention distracted, the collector creature took that moment to leapt out of the elevator and pin him to the ground. He didn't even have a chance to scream before he died. As much as Musashi wanted to stop and save him, he had to get Joker to the AI core. So he led Joker through the door. Their last sight was of the collector turning on the other 2. They heard a scream quickly after and a second one within moments. Shit, Joker said again. Musashi looked back to make sure that he was still with him. You've got to keep moving, Joker, he told the pilot. The ladder to the maintenance shaft was at the far end of the lab. It wasn't a long walk, for that was all Joker could manage, but the fear made it feel longer. As they reached the ladder, Joker took hold of the bars. He was about to lower himself down when he made the mistake of looking up at the glass window nearby. When he saw the floating collector on the other side looking back, his fear struck him hard and he froze. All he could do was say, shit. Move, Joker! Musashi roared, facing the glass with the Bakken in a ready stance. If it wasn't for the pilot's condition, he would have been very tempted to kick him down. Shit! Even as he said it, Joker managed to get his body moving down the maintenance shaft. Musashi held his place in front of the glass while Joker disappeared from sight. The collector watched him too for a moment before it turned away and floated off. If it was a human or any other kind of normal alien, the ex-cop would have thought that he'd been brushed off. But he wasn't going to look this gift horse in the mouth. He went down the shaft after Joker. If either of them thought that things would be easier once they came out of the shaft, EDI killed that hope right away by saying, multiple hostiles detected on the crew deck. Joker had a grim look on his face when he realized that he would have to move quickly again. Musashi was right behind Joker and came in front of him as soon as he came off the ladder. They were in the life support control room. The door was closed and there was a crewmate standing by it with a gun drawn. "Report," the ex-cop told him. He turned and saluted, showing that he had been former military. "The deck is crawling with those things, sir," he said instantly. "Well, that's just great," Joker said, already in mourning for what will happen. The crewman saw him, and relief washed over his face. "Joker, am I glad to see you?" That was surprising for him to hear. "You are?" He nodded. EDI gave the crew the message. "You've got to get to the AI core." He lifted his gun to a ready position. "I'll help cover you." "Good man," Musashi said approvingly. "What's your name, crewman?" "Hawthorne, sir," he replied instantly. "We get through this alive, I'll put in a good word for you." "Thank you, sir." The ex-cop went to the door, keeping his Bach-Ken at the ready. He motioned Hawthorne to get behind him and for Joker to get behind Hawthorne. The door opened and Musashi was the first through, shouting, "Go! Go! Go!" Joker followed Hawthorne out the door. Things out here were just as chaotic as they were up above. He saw Yeoman Chambers being dragged into the elevator. She was screaming in fear and tried desperately to get free, but the collector that had her tightly. "Let go of her!" Hawthorne roared, charging at the elevator with his gun blazing. But since he charged in so recklessly, he didn't what was beyond the corner. "Hawthorne!" Joker shouted to him, trying to pass off a warning. But it was already too late. A collector had been lying in wait and pounced on Hawthorne. It broke his arm, making him cry out in pain, and threw him around like a rag doll, breaking his neck in the end and throwing him away like he was a broken toy. Musashi saw the same thing, and while he wanted to turn back to teach that collector a painful lesson, he couldn't. "Joker, come on!" he shouted back at the pilot while he fended off another collector. "Shit, shit, shit!" Joker chanted to himself as he hurried past them down the other side of the elevator. The red lights went down to the medical bay, but he would have to pass through by the mess table, and there was a collector waiting nearby. He looked back and saw that Musashi was still beating back his own collector. "Oh shit! Move, Joker!" Musashi shouted at him. It got him moving and he hobbled down the corridor. The second collector saw him when he reached the door, and he thought that he was a goner. But it suddenly fell flat on its face, and he saw Quan Misley standing behind it with her butterfly knife out. "What are you standing around for, Joker?" she demanded, her hand going for a grenade on her belt. "Move it!" He went through the door just as he heard her say, "Musashi, get clear!" There was no one in the medical bay, which was both comforting and disturbing. It was comforting in the fact that there were no collectors there waiting for him. But it was disturbing because he knew that Dr. Chukwas would never abandon this place. So that meant they had already gotten her. "No, don't think about that," he told himself. It wasn't the time for it. "Main fusion plant offline," EDI announced suddenly. "Activating emergency H-fuel cells." Hearing her voice spurred him on again. But even as he moved, he couldn't help but think about everything that happened in the space of a half hour. The ship had gone to hell and it didn't look like it was coming back. "What the shit?" he exclaimed, the words coming out before he really had a chance to stop himself. Still, he moved for the door at the back and went into the AI core. "All right, I'm at, you," he said to EDI as he approached the controls. There was a small flash of blue out of the corner of his eye. He didn't turn around, but he knew that it was the orb. For some reason, that gave him comfort. Connect the core to the Normandy's primary control module. While his fingers went to working typing in the information, his paranoid brain made his mouth talk. "Great. See, this is where it starts, and when we're all just organic batteries, guess who they'll blame? This is all Joker's fault. What a fool he was. I have to spend all day computing pi because he plugged in the Overlord." Even as he complained, he finished doing as instructed. With the last keystroke entered, EDI's orb grew large, engulfed the room, and faded from sight. The lights went dark and he heard a lot of machines making those little sounds whenever a computer gets access to them. For a moment Joker wondered if EDI had failed. But then the lights came back on and so did her voice. "Ah. I have access to the defensive systems. Thank you, Mr. Morrow." The orb popped back into sight in front of him. "Now you must reactive the primary drive and engineering." He realized what that meant since he couldn't go in the elevator. He didn't like it. Arg! He groaned. You want me to go crawling through the ducts again? I enjoy the sight of humans on their knees. He froze and looked at her. Wait, what? That is a joke. Right, he said, half believing her. The door opened and Musashi stumbled in. He looked drained and tired, holding his side with his free hand. He looked back and called out, Quan Misley, get in here. Joker swung back around, but there was no else coming through the door. Where is she? He asked. Musashi ignored him, more focused on the outside. Come on, disengage and get here. Eddie! Shouted the hunter from beyond the door. Close the door, now! Close and lock it. The door started to close. Musashi reached out to stop it, but it shut before he could touch it. EDI, open the door! He ordered the AI as he stared hostilely at the red light on the door. There was no response. EDI, open the door! I cannot do that, the AI replied. Why not? He demanded. A thump was heard against the side of the door, and it got his attention. Quan Misley, is that you? Yeah, it's me, Quan Misley said from the other side. She sounded strained and tired, like she had come out of a fight that she probably didn't win. The thought of that did not paint a good picture inside Joker's head. EDI, get the door open, he said. I cannot do that, Mr. Morrow. The collectors are becoming aware of you and what you are trying to do. Currently, they believe the only way to get to you is through that door. If they break through before you get through the air ducts, there is a good chance that you will be caught. By having Quan Misley fend them off here, it will give you more time. But that will kill her. I can hear you, Joker, Quan Misley said from the other side of the door. Just get going, I'll be able to handle myself. You'd better not die, Quan Misley, Musashi told her. I'll be fine, Musashi, she replied. She tried to sound confident, but neither of them believed the tone. If they could see her, she probably would have been leaning on something for support. Shit, they're coming again. Get moving, you two! She ordered with a roar. The shaft behind Mr. Musashi connects to the engineering deck, EDI supplied. Good luck. Joker went down the shaft and Musashi followed him. The last thing they heard of Quan Misley shouting, You want me, you hijo de puta? I'm right here. When Joker came off the ladder in the engineering deck, he took one step and almost fell over on the bed. Whoa! Musashi cried out, grabbing him by the back of his shirt and stopping him. You okay? Yeah, thanks for the save, he replied. He looked down at the bed. It was tidy, which he found a little bit funny considering the mess they were in now. Then again, looking at the bed reminded him of Ruko and Miranda. A shudder involuntarily went up his spine as he remembered accidentally walking in on them in Miranda's office. I'm just glad Ruko laughed it off and took it in stride, he thought gratefully. It had been the blonde who had kept Miranda from ripping him limb from limb. He would have thought it'd be the other way around. Hostiles are present in engineering, EDI proclaimed. They are heading to the cargo bay. Why are they doing that? Musashi asked. He still looked angry at leaving Quan Misley behind like that. He never liked leaving people behind. I don't know, but let's not be concerned about that, Joker suggested. They started towards the stairs. A shadow appeared on the wall above and in front of them. Saints save me, he whispered as he watched the shadow move across the wall. Musashi stepped forward up the stairs, his hand on his bakken and his feet moving quietly. When he had the elevation, he looked around and saw a collector on the walkway above. It was heading to the cargo bay, and there was some kind of pod following it. He paused, holding his breath but still watching it move. His breath wasn't released until the collector and the pod following him went through the door. They went up the stairs and turned to the door for engineering. Eddie? Asked Joker. The AI didn't need any more words for clarification. Engineering is clear of hostiles. Proceed immediately to minimize chances of detections. That was all he needed to hear. He started for them but saw that Musashi wasn't moving. What are you doing? He asked, stopping his gait. Making sure that you'll have time, the ex-cop told him. The implication that he was doing just what Quan Misley had done was silent but also obvious. No, absolutely not, he said instantly. I'll be fine. You only have a stick. It's a bakken and I know how to handle it. Move it, Joker. He took a ready stance and waited. Joker considered doing something that would make him stop this bad idea. But one look at the focused expression on his face told him that it wasn't going to happen. He had seen that look before, on Naruto many times. So all he said was, if I tell you to get in here, you get in here. I can do that. A door opened close by, making them freeze momentarily. Musashi recovered first and said, "Go, Joker." He turned around and went into engineering. He hobbled over to the console. "Alright, now what?" he asked EDI. "Activate the drive and I will open the airlocks as we accelerate. All hostiles will be killed." "What? What about the crew?" He knew that Musashi was still with him. There had to be others still on the ship. "They are gone, Jeff. The collectors took them." The words sank into his mind and made him stop. The entire crew was already gone? The collectors acted that fast? Was Quan Misley overtaken without any challenge? A fear gripped him and he looked back at the door. "Musashi, you still there?" he called out. "I'm here," Musashi replied. "You done yet?" He didn't answer, instead turning his head back to the console. "Shit," he muttered to himself. Suddenly, there was a screech from beyond the door, something that sounded like it had caught a fresh kill and was about to pounce. What was that? "They found us. If you're going to do something, do it now. Get in here. I'm going to have to blow out the airlocks." "What?" "Just get in here." The door opened and Musashi stepped through quickly, fending off claws with the bakken. "Eddie," he called out when he was through. The door slammed shut on the collector arm, severing it in half. The collector on the other side screamed while the door's light turned red. "There's more of them coming, and this door won't them all for long." "I am sealing the engine room," EDI told them both. Both their words made Joker start for the drive console, which was right in front of the drive itself. When he reached the console, his fingers nervously began typing in the commands EDI needed. All he could think was, "Please don't let this blow up in our faces." That was just something he didn't need. When he was done, EDI said, "I have control." The drive core started to spin and generate its own force, like it was supposed to. A shockwave hit Joker hard in the chest and knocked him down to the ground. He didn't know how long he lay there. At one moment, he felt like he had blacked out. But his senses started coming back to him, and he felt very aware of how cold the metal was. "Ah," Musashi said from behind him. The ex-cop was leaning against the door and held his head in one hand. "Shouldn't you have told me to hold on to something?" "I thought that you had done that to begin with," Joker replied. "Purge complete," EDI declared. "No other lifeforms on board. Securing airlocks and cargo bay doors." He slowly stood up, being careful not to hurt himself doing so. A quick look back showed him that Musashi was fine and doing the same thing he was. "Send a message to the teams," he told EDI. "Tell them what happened." He added a silent prayer that he wouldn't end up dead because of what happened. "Message away," EDI said. The AI paused for a moment and then said, "Are you feeling well, Jeff?" "That's the second time she's called me by my name," he noted. Before now, she had always called him Mr. Moreau. It was a change, one that he hadn't been expecting. But then he hadn't expected to start following the commander's lead and giving the AI a gender. Maybe it was because they argued all the time, but EDI was beginning to sound like an actual woman to him now. "No. But thanks for asking." It took them 3 days to pick up the team that went with Tali and Jinchuriki, and then Naruto from Omega. No one asked where Samara had gone to, mostly because they were more focused on the fact that the ship was basically being run on autopilot by EDI, something that should have never happened. Joker didn't say anything until everyone on the team was back on the ship and they were away from any stations or planets. It was only then, in the meeting room, that he and Musashi explained everything that had happened. No one interrupted them as they spoke. They were too busy being stunned and shocked. The collectors had been there, on the ship, taken all of the crew, and hadn't been aware until they were contacted. Tali's team had been riding something of a high point when they finished their mission turning the virus back on the heretic Geth. But as soon as they got word about this, that high left faster than they could blink. When the two were done, no one said anything for a full minute. Joker looked at everyone he could from where he sat on the conference table. They looked like they were trying to understand what he had explained. "Guys?" he said, "are you going to say anything?" His question made Miranda start off and say, "Everyone? You lost everyone, and damn near lost the ship, too?" She was angry, they could all see it. Her hand was tightened into a fist. It looked like she was about to slug Joker into the wall. But he saw that fist and her anger, and it made him angry. It prompted the return of his near-legendary snark. "I know, all right? I was here. Jacob saw that his snark only made her angrier. He was on the other side of the room, so he couldn't physically reach out to stop her. But he didn't always need to do that. His words were just as effective. It's not his fault, Miranda. None of us caught it. Mr. Taylor is correct, Edie agreed, her orb popping up on the table right beside Joker. He didn't even react to her doing that. The harmful data in the collector drive was even more sophisticated than the black box Reaper viruses I was given. Naruto looked at his pilot, considered him for a moment. Then he turned his attention to Musashi. The two of you are good, right? He asked them both. They didn't answer right away. Joker looked to the door. He could hear the crew out there, even though he knew that they were gone. It wasn't a good feeling, not to him. There's a lot of empty chairs out there, he said. Musashi looked at a specific spot of the room, where Quan Misley always leaned against the conference table. There's an empty one in here too. No one said anything. Losing the crew was horrible, but losing Quan Misley? She was a part of the team. It hurt more to lose her. Naruto felt especially bad for the loss. He had treated her like the villagers had treated him when they first came aboard the ship. The ice between them was only just beginning to thaw, and now she was captured by the collectors. He was not going to stand for it. She would be coming back and so help the idiots that stood in his way of doing that. We did everything we could, Jeff, Edie told Joker, her voice surprisingly gentle. He heard the gentleness and was glad for it. But it still hurt him to think that the crew was lost because he had thought that everything was just fine. Yeah, thanks, Mom. Is the ship in order? Eric asked from where he stood against the wall. I think it is safe to say that we cannot allow this to happen again. EDI and I purged the system. The Reaper IFF is online. He looked at Naruto and told him, we can go through the Omega-4 relay whenever you want. That's good to hear, the blonde replied with a nod. Miranda turned her hard gaze on the blue orb. Hearing how the AI saved the ship the way it did put a sour taste in her mouth. Don't get me started about unshackling a damn AI. Joker glared at her challengingly. What could I do against the collectors? Break my arm at them? EDI cleared the ship. She's alright. And here I thought it would be a cold day in hell before he would say something like that, Kurama remarked. They had all known about their pilot's hostility to the AI. It came up whenever Naruto would head to the cockpit. EDI had something to say in her own defense. I assure you, I am still bound by protocols in my programming, she explained to them all. Even if I were not, you are still my crewmates. Those words made Naruto smile, just a little bit. She knew the truth of it. They were her friends and she wouldn't abandon them. That cinches it for me, he declared. She's a part of the team. Miranda still didn't believe in it all. She looked like she wanted to argue the fact. Ruko saw the expression on her face, like she was ready to argue before a court, and went over to her. She enfolded her hand around hers and leaned into her shoulder. Let it go, she whispered into her ear. We've got other things to worry about. Miranda's face tightened even more so for a moment. But then it relaxed and she nodded unhappily. Everyone else was just surprised at what they had seen. They knew that the two women were sleeping with each other, but they had always taken Miranda to be the calm one of the two. To see Ruko calm Miranda down was not something that they would have ever suspected of happening. Jacob looked at the two women quietly. There was a small smile on his lips as he remembered what he had told Naruto about Miranda. It turned out that she didn't get a man, but a woman. Still, Ruko was good for her. The smile faded from his lips as he thought what came next. Sounds like we have everything we need to rescue the crew, he declared. He's right, Miranda agreed. She sounded almost glad for the change in topic. We've done everything we can. It's time we take the fight to the collectors. What about the tribe? Zaid asked. They've got a rather bad habit of showing up when we don't need them. Naruto had almost forgotten about the tribe. Truth be told, if he was being really honest, he would have liked it better that way. They were like a hive of bees that went after him constantly, trying to sting him until he gave up and let them overtake him. Every time he tried swatting them away, they just seemed to fade back and reappear later. Zaid was right to be concerned about them. But his crew was missing and he knew where to get them back. The tribe can go fuck itself, he proclaimed. We're going after the collectors. Everyone take your stations. It was a good thing that the ship could be run by a skeleton if need be. Joker got off the table and saluted him. Aye, Commander, he said. I will get right on it. He walked out of the conference room. The others began to leave the room, heading to their stations. Naruto stayed behind, his eyes falling down to his hand. There was a kunai clenched there. It had been there since he had gotten back from Omega. It wasn't any kind of kunai, though. It was one of his dad's, tri-pronged and everything. He brought the kunai up onto the table and laid it there. He looked at the script written on the handle. He didn't have to, not when he knew what it meant. The Hiraishin Jutsu had not been one of the jutsu he had learned during the war. He was always too busy with everything else. In hindsight, though, it probably would have been better if he had learned it. He might have saved a lot more people if he had learned it. But that wasn't the point. He was more concerned about where it came from. He was given it by Arya the morning after. She handed it to him over breakfast and said that it came to her 3 weeks ago with instructions to give it to him. It was a little more than odd for that kind of thing to happen, not to mention the fact that Arya didn't like to be used as a mailbox. But the question remained, why would he be sent a Hiraishin kunai? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper that had been wrapped around the handle when it was given to him. He looked at it again, reading the words. Use this only when you absolutely must. It's a last resort, and what you requested. The collectors are able to track multiple uses. Don't worry. You do know how to use it, just not consciously. You know, he said to himself. I'm really beginning to think that my past self is a real pain in the ass. There was only one person who could have written something that was equal parts vague and mystifying about what he was doing. Plus, he knew his handwriting anywhere. Kurama snorted in derision. What do you mean by your past self? You're a pain in the ass, period. I don't think now's the time for that, Gyuki rebuked him. The Hachibi was completely serious because it was a serious matter they were facing. Naruto took the kunai back in hand and held it up to eye level. Why am I doing this? He asked aloud. It's like I'm deliberately sending myself on a half-assed scavenger hunt. It had been odd but also a little intriguing at first. Now it was just getting very annoying. You didn't want to leave behind concrete evidence of what you were doing? Shikaku offered as a suggestion. Maybe, he said back absently. I don't know. He wondered briefly if he should get into contact with Liara, to see if she found any other OSDs he left scattered around the galaxy. But he stopped himself before the idea caught on. It was a stupid one, and could also take time away. His crew could not afford such loss of time. Kurama could see where his Jinchuriki was going with his train of thought. It wasn't good, and he didn't need it at this point. Look to the bright side, Gaki, he said. There's a bright side to this crisis? Naruto asked him, not really thinking that there was a bright side at having lost his crew to the collectors when he could have done something. Not about the collectors, but your memories. That he had an even harder time believing. But he could humor the fox. Kami knows he's been doing that when they weren't arguing or fighting. Alright, what's the bright side? Knowing your luck, you'll find out why you lost your memories in a way that will make perfect sense right after you've been through a harrowing experience that will leave you changed. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, so what you're saying is that, after this suicide mission that we're about to go on, I will somehow get my memories back. All he had really been getting were memories of Sakura's life. He had one while sleeping with Arya, who, although she would deny it vehemently and violently, was a snuggler. It had been a vision of when Sakura finally retired as a doctor from the hospital. She looked so old then. It made him wonder how many of the others were still alive. The Kyuubi nodded his head and twitched his tails in a way that made them look like they were shrugging. It's something to look forward to. Wasn't I supposed to be the one who makes the stupid remarks? Shikaku asked. He didn't know if he should have felt insulted or relieved that he was relieved of that position. Naruto rolled his eyes. I am not going to dignify that with a response, Shikaku, he told the Tanuki as he took the kunai and paper away, walking out the door. It took them 2 days to reach the Omega-4 relay. In that time, they were all manning the ship. It wasn't a new experience for them as they had helped out where they could have asked or curious about something. But that was when they had the crew with them who were able to work with and around them. Now the entire set of the duties they dealt with fell on their shoulders and they had to do the best that they could. But it wasn't the work that was on their minds. What was coming was there too. They did not know what would be on the other side of the Omega-4 relay, no one did. Any ship that tried going through never came back. There was also the fact that they were going to the collector base of operations itself. The ship had been terrifying enough, what would the base be like? That question stayed with them, and they tried not to think about it. They busied themselves with the work when on shift, and when they weren't, they tried to sleep or find something that would relax them. Gurus was practically never seen outside of the main battery. Grunt was always pounding away on a punching bag they had gotten on Ilium. Miranda and Ruko were together practically every second that they could, and it wasn't always for sex. They just wanted the comfort of the company. When they reached the relay, Naruto had Joker and EDI take over the ship for a little bit while the team got ready for the battle ahead. He had taken over the mess table for his preparations. His guns, ammo and chakra clips, kunai, shuriken, and sealing scrolls were all laid out in a rather haphazard way to the passerby. But he knew where everything was and could find it easily. The war had taught him that he needed to be prepared. It had also taught him to be quick. That was why he went through everything swiftly, checking each blade and sharp edge of his weapons, making sure the ammo all full, and ensuring that the scrolls would be at the ready. He didn't have any grenades on hand, but that wouldn't be a deterrent for him. He would be careful about those until he got the crew back. The scrolls would have to be used only when have to. The same went for his chakra. If he tried to use it all like he normally would, he was going to end up dead. Fuck! Joker yelled over the intercom. We do not need this shit right now. We don't need it. His shouting got Naruto's attention. He finished up his inspection and looked to the ceiling. It was pointless, but he still did it. Joker, what is it? He called out as he started putting away the arsenal. There's a fucking tribe ship blocking our path, the relay. If I try getting anywhere near that thing, it's likely to get me killed. Anger and irritation burned through him. Joker was right. They did not need this kind of shit right now. He had a feeling that they would be fighting it out against the tribe ship before they would even get to the relay. Gurus. He called out to the Turian in the main battery. Get that chakra amplifier into the cannon, and have it at the ready. We're probably going to need it. Got it, shouted back Gurus. He left the mess and raced up to the cockpit. As he came to stand beside Joker's seat, he looked at the screen. It showed that the tribe's ship was in front of the relay, and it didn't look like it was going anywhere. Have they tried hailing us? He asked Joker. No, he answered. There have been no hailing attempts. They're just sitting there. How long have they been here? He looked up at the blonde with a deadpan expression. I seriously hope you're not expecting an answer to that from me. No, it was just something on my mind. Try hailing them. What? That was possibly one of the dumbest ideas Joker had ever heard, and he had heard a good deal of them. Hail them. Maybe they'll be nice and let us pass. Yeah, and maybe I'll be able to run the marathon tomorrow and break the galactic record in the process. Just hail them, Joker. We might get lucky. Relying on your luck is not an ideal situation right now, Coco told him with a mild rebuke. Do you have a better idea? He asked back. The only way I see us getting through that relay is if we waste time fighting that thing and then going through. By then, the crew could be killed. Joker frowned intently at his keyboard and screens. Hailing them now, he told Naruto. The moments that passed were and felt tense. When the communication screen opened, the small hope that Naruto held vanished. Shit, Joker whispered, and the blonde agreed. They were looking at the Huntress, who somehow managed to look down her nose at them through a screen. Naruto Uzumaki, she said, turning her head slightly to look at him. Hey there, he said back conversationally. You look fine. There were plenty of other things that he could have said, but he was trying to go for diplomatic and barring that polite. But the Huntress looked like she had gotten more metal attached to her face, and possibly her body, since the last time he had seen her. Half of her face was an exoskeleton, all centered on her red eye, and he hadn't been the one to do it this time. So, you've finally decided to give yourself back to the tribe like you should have in the first place. He frowned in confusion. Where the hell did that come from? No, I didn't. Of course you have, she said, still somehow managing to sniff her nose in disregard in spite of it being metal. Why else have you come here to me? I think the better question is, why are you here first? Are you trying to stop people from going through the relay or something? Just you, she told him. Don't be so surprised. The tribe understood what you were doing once you stopped attacking our bases and boarded the collector ship. We quickly figured out that you would attempt to use the Omega-4 relay at some point, so they sent me here to wait for you. He wasn't surprised by what she said. He was surprised by the implication. Wait, you thought that I would just come to you? Yes. Whoa, can she get any more delusional? Saiken asked. I don't think that should be answered. He agreed with what they were saying. The huntress just sounded insane when she talked like that. I'm not here to surrender to you. I need to go through that relay. She snorted in derision, again an impressive thing with her nose looking like that. Do you really think that I will let you get yourself killed before you are brought back to the tribe? They were quite specific when they told me to bring you in alive. He thought that she just sounded even more insane. But then he remembered that she didn't know about the Reaper IFF. It was something that was probably shouldn't be told to her. I need to get my crew back. Did they go through the relay? The collectors took them. I would say shame, but that would imply that I care when I don't. The anger rose up again, and he had to force it down. I need to go get them back. If you can get out of the way, we can have this discussion later. Her nose went up higher in the air. This is not a discussion. Would you prefer to call it a negotiation? It's not a negotiation either. What would you like to call this talk of ours? I'm trying to get somewhere, and you're standing in the way. I promise that when we get back, we'll continue this conversation. I know that humans don't have much when it comes to the brain, but try to think. It'll hurt less than you think. It's a known fact that no one goes through the Omega-4 relay and comes back alive. He ignored the insult to his intelligence. Years of being called a dope by Sasuke had done wonders in that regard. You never know, we might be the first. Joker looked back up at him, silently demanding what the hell he was doing. He kept his focus on the huntress. I thought you were trying to be diplomatic, Komi, said to him. Kurama wasn't watching the events happening. He was too busy having his hand over his eyes. He is being diplomatic. Here is what will happen, the huntress spoke. You will stay there, let us board you, and take you back to the tribe so that you can be experimented on in order to figure out the secrets of chakra. If you refuse, we will cripple your ship, board it anyway, and still take you back after destroying it. Like you were going to keep them alive if I surrender peacefully? Naruto thought sarcastically to himself. He believed that as much as he believed he would let Obito win the war. How about I make you a counteroffer? He replied. You let us pass through the Omega-4 relay and everything will be alright. Or you can refuse and we do the usual routine. And what, in your mind, is the usual routine? It's where I get away scot-free whilst making you look humiliated and losing another portion of your body. As I recall, I am undefeated. Not the time, Naruto, son told him. He saw the flash of anger in her still actual eye, but she made herself look bored at his proclamation. Are you done? Give me your answer to my demands. The Yambi instantly changed his opinion. Forget what I said. Make this stuck-up bitch look stupid. That's the plan, Naruto told him. He reached out and pressed gently against Joker's shoulder. The pilot looked back subtly, and he shook his head once. The channel was cut before there was an answer, and the blonde turned back to the rest of the ship. Everyone, man your stations. What are we going to do, Commander? Joker called out to his retreating backside. We're going to make this bitch work for what she wants, and then we're going to make her look stupid when we get right by her. When he reached the map, he quickly ascended the stairs and placed his hands on the rail, channeling his chakra through it. The tugging sensation pulled at his feet and went up the rest of his body. He found himself in space, looking at the two ships facing off. The relay was glaring bloody red behind the tribe ship. That was the goal that they needed to reach. Is everyone at their stations? He asked. Main battery is at the ready, Gurus announced. Is the Churka amplifier in? It is. I'm with him, Grunt said. I've got the Nix cannon. The Krogan sounded a little excited for what he was about to do. That might have been a little unsettling. If Naruto knew if he hadn't trained Grunt he would be roaring for blood right now. Port side radar ready, Morden announced. Starboard radar ready, Thane announced. Radar systems ready, Miranda announced. Visual scanner ready, Zaid announced. Thermographic scanner ready, Jacob announced. I'm down in engineering, Naruto, Tali said. I'm ready alongside Kasumi. I've got the torpedoes good to go, Musashi proclaimed. But I think that I will need some help in a pinch. Who's closest to Musashi right now? Naruto asked. That's me and Tali, Kasumi answered him. I'll go help him if he needs it. I've got shield readings at the ready, Ruko declared. I am ready with the Guardian system, Eric said. They were all there and they were ready. But there was one last thing that needed checking. Are you good to defend against any hacking attempts? Asked Naruto. I am, Commander, Edi replied. I have also asked Jinchuriki to assist in the event that I become overwhelmed. Oh good God, Miranda grumbled. Naruto opened his mouth to reply, but Ruko got to her first. Not the time, Miranda. Just leave it, alright? The blonde got the feeling that his sister was staring rather intently at her lover. They're a little annoyed huff before she said fine. With that settled, there was nothing else to check in on. Joker, Naruto called out to the pilot as he watched the two ships face off with each other. Yes, Commander? Asked Joker. Taunt the bitch, would you? He traced the path from the Normandy to the relay, right under the tribe ship. You got it. If the shinobi didn't know any better, he would have thought that there was a vicious smile on Joker's face. He watched the ship surge forward towards the relay. It wasn't moving at a fast pace, but more of a speed that seemed insolent. He waited as it came closer and closer to the relay, wanting to see the tribe ship take the bait. It didn't take the huntress to respond. The tribe ship fly towards the Normandy, almost like a predator trying to take down prey. But his ship wasn't prey. It was a smaller and more agile predator. Joker, dive, he commanded. The ship dipped down just as the tribe ship came to in firing distance. It pulled out of the dive just short enough to practically skim underneath the belly of the beast. Ha! Zaid barked out. Like taking candy from a baby. We are not done yet, Eric cautioned the merc. We must get to the relay. It's not like they're going to turn around and fire torpedoes. Hang on, people, Joker said. They're turning around. Naruto watched the tribe bank a curve in space. It moved rather fast for such an ugly-looking ship. They're firing torpedoes, Thane announced. Despite the situation, Eric still took the time to say to Zaid, would you like to rephrase that? Not the time. The torpedoes were getting close and soon the second set was right behind. Joker, take the Normandy up and twist around, Naruto ordered, his finger already tracing the path need to be taken. Aye, replied Joker. The view went upwards and twisted around violently. Oh, that's nauseating, Saiken declared, sounding like he was about to hurl. Naruto instantly became worried about what the slug might do. We already had that talk, Saiken. There will be no throwing up in my mind. I told you that I wouldn't make any promises. Relax, Saiken, Shikaka said with a derisive snort. The twisting already stopped. We lost the first pair of torpedoes, Jacob announced. I've got their heat trail going right through the relay. But the second pair is still following us. Have them, Morden announced. On our trail and bearing fast. Estimated impact in 20 seconds. I am tracking them with the Guardian now, Eric replied. Lining up the shot. 15 seconds. Almost. 10 seconds. Taking the fucking shot, Eric, shouted Ruko. The torpedoes were closer by the second, gaining inch by inch. It looked like it was all over for them when Eric announced firing. Naruto watched the lasers tracking and hitting the torpedoes. The twin explosions were quickly snuffed out in the vacuum of space. That's one problem down, Naruto thought to himself. Cutting it a little fucking close there, Eric, shouted Ruko. She sounded more annoyed than angry. Any closer and that would have impacted on our shields. This is different from handling a mortar, Ruko, Eric replied. I am not used to this. Well, get used to it. Can I fire back? Grunt asked, sounding excited at the idea. Gurus was quick to reply. No, Grunt. Wait. That's no fun. We're not here for fun. Commander, I'm swinging her around, Joker announced. The ship turned in space, but the tribe ship was doing the same thing. Heads up, Joker, warned Naruto. The enemy is turning around. She's coming right up on you. They are trying to hack into the ship's systems in an attempt to stop us, EDI announced, adding to the bad news. I am withstanding their attempts at the moment, but I would not recommend trying to enter the relay at this moment. Great, just great, Joker said with a grumble. If anyone else has bad news, keep it to themselves because I don't want to hear it right now. Joker, you're going to have to do something about that ship, Naruto told him, bringing him back to what they were trying to do here. I know that. Musashi, you got some torpedoes ready? At the ready, replied Musashi. He saw where his pilot was going with this. Hang on, Joker. Let me see if I can plot the course for you. Make it fast. That should go without saying, he thought to himself. I know. Not the time, he finished Gyuki's words for him. He traced the path so that it would turn around in a flip, putting more distance between them and prevent any sudden attacks. You got it? He asked Joker. I do. Hold on. The ship surged upwards into a high arc, going right over the tribe's ship as it got close. Joker angled the ship so that it would look straight down at the enemy. Musashi, fire torpedoes, he ordered. Firing torpedoes, replied Musashi. Twin lights let loose from underneath the ship, flying right for the target. They didn't make it 3/4 of the way before the Guardian lasers opened return fire, destroying them both. Damn it, Naruto swore silently. What did you expect? Sun asked him. You knew that wasn't going to work. Torpedoes would only work at close distances. If I pulled the ship in that close to fire off a set of torpedoes, their weapons would peel this ship apart. You've got other weapons, don't you? He knew that the Normandy had other weapons. But the fight had so far been them trying to keep away from the tribe's ship. They didn't have time to actually counterattack. That needed to change. Joker, we're going on the offensive, he said. We have to, his pilot said back. They're in front of the relay again. He saw that the tribe's ship had turned around again and stayed there, like a great beast guarding its stolen prey. If he could see into the ship itself, he would be willing to bet money that the Huntress was gloating at that moment. Well, he wasn't going to let her enjoy the moment. She was going to regret pissing him off. Grunt, he started. Stay on point, Gaki, Kurama warned him suddenly. You're trying to get through the relay, not destroy her. He paused. The fox had a point. He was about to have everyone ensure that they destroyed the enemy ship. But they didn't have time for it. He was glad for the reminder, but he wasn't going to let the fox know about that. Is there anything else that obviously needs to be pointed out? He asked with a good dose of sarcasm. The QB didn't fall for the sarcasm. He knew that the blonde had gotten the point. Hop to it already. Sensei? Asked Grunt impatiently. Grunt, he said again, get ready with the next cannon. There was a growl on anticipation on the other end of the line. What am I shooting? He asked. Her nose off, Naruto answered. But wait for my command. He traced the path for the ship going down sharply at the enemy before dipping down suddenly. Joker, follow this course. His pilot didn't argue or protest the decision. He only said, you got it? The ship tilted down and came at the tribe's ship with a ramming speed. Come on, Naruto silently urged the enemy. He knew that the Huntress's ego wouldn't let the ship just stay there. They had to move to intercept. If they didn't move, he would have to put the ship on Plan B, and that didn't have as good a chance as this did. As the Normandy hurtled towards the tribal ship, it still didn't move. Come on, you arrogant bitch. Make the move. Make the move. It didn't seem like she would, that she had wised up to what he was trying to pull. But then the tribe's ship moved to intercept, and he knew that she hadn't wised up at all. Got you, he thought in triumph. Grunt! He called out. Shoot her nose off. Yes, sir! A blue lance of energy fired out from the Normandy right at the tribal ship. It must have seen the lance incoming because it tried to turn away so that a more shield area would take the hit. But the lance was faster than they were and struck them dead center. It carved out a line through the center, leaving a scar there that would definitely cause them trouble. And that's what you get for pissing me off, Naruto silently told the Huntress as he watched the tribal ship come to a stop. Now was their chance. Joker, drop the ship. Dropping the ship, replied the pilot. He watched the Normandy go right below the tribe's ship like it was nothing. It came back up and again it looked like they had a clear shot to the relay. This time, Sade chose to keep his mouth shut. As they came closer and closer to the relay, their hope and dread started to grow again. There was hope for reaching their crewmates, but dread to see what they would find on the other side of the relay. Wait, they're turning around, Thane announced. I see them, Miranda said. They're firing lasers. We're so close. We can't stop now, Jacob protested. Naruto had an idea that would get the Huntress off their backs and get that humiliation for her. Joker, do a loop. Gurus, stand ready with that cannon. On it, Commander, Gurus replied. Aye, Commander, Joker said. What are you doing? Komiya asked him. He watched the ship dip down momentarily. Something stupid, he said. I gathered that. Just how stupid are you thinking? Not sure. Saiken groaned. Oh no, you're winging it? Most likely, he answered, his hands already beginning to mold the jutsu into being. I'm probably going to be in a good amount of pain. Oh, so long as you've got the priorities straight. Let it go, Saiken, Kurama told the slug. You've been through this before. You might as well enjoy the ride. You say it like that's a good thing, Isabu replied. The Normandy pulled out of the dip and threw itself up into a loop. The entirety of space tilted and turned upside down for him. He waited for the right moment, keeping the jutsu honed and at the ready. For a moment, he wondered if this would actually work. After all, he was in the middle of outer space. Maybe it wouldn't work the same way down on a planet. He stopped himself from continuing the line of thought. Now wasn't the time to contemplate the usage of jutsu where there was no air or gravity. Gurus, how we doing? He asked. Making the final adjustments now, Gurus replied. Just give me a few seconds. Make it fast, Joker said, his voice sounding a little bit strained. I'll be coming out of this loop pretty soon. There, adjustments are done. Commander, fire when you are ready. He was ready all right. Futon, raise and shuriken. He cried out, thrusting the jutsu forward. It vanished from his hand and for a moment, he wondered if he had made a very bad move. The seconds seemed to stretch out and out. Then time snapped back to normal as he watched the same jutsu he had in his hand get fired out from the cannon and form in space before flying right at the tribal ship. It caught the ship in the back and sheared off a portion. Ha, you just sliced off its ass, Commander, Sade said with a howl of laughter. Way to go. Pain filled him right then and there. It made him feel like he wasn't able to feel anything in his body. Breath came hard to him, and it was even harder to keep it in. Joker, go, he wheezed out. Commander, are you all right? Joker asked, concern coloring his voice. Go, he said, trying to be more forceful. It only made his voice sound even wheezier. Holy hell, Miranda said in a horrified voice. Get him out of there. Get him out of full immersion now. They didn't have the time to worry about that now. Joker, go. Naruto told the pilot with every bit of authority he was able to muster up. There was a moment of silence from the other end. He wondered if they were going to try and pull him out of full immersion, losing time to get through the relay. Hold on, Commander, Joker said. The ship picked up speed and flew right into the relay. You do remember what happened the last time you did this, right? Matatabi asked the blonde. I remember. In fact, he was hoping for it. Oh, this is going to be bad, Shikaka said with a slight groan to his voice. I hope you know what you're doing. Same here, he replied. What did you say? Approaching Omega 4 relay, Joker announced for all of them to hear. Everyone, stand ready. Reaper IFF activated, Edei said, signal acknowledged. Ooh, that's pretty, Kasumi said, almost in awe. What's pretty? Naruto demanded. He had a feeling that when Kasumi found something to be pretty, she was liable to grab it. She's talking about the drive core, Naruto, Tali told him. Those words were relieving, but the effect got washed away by what she said next. It's lighting up like I've never seen before. Drive core electrical charge at critical levels, Edei proclaimed. Rerouting, replied Joker, his voice slightly panicking. Whatever it was that he was doing, it must have worked as the relay started throwing out red lightning at the ship, latching on like tetherhooks. The energy struck Naruto with such intensity that he almost fell backwards. Hello? He thought as it washed over him and then burrowed in. He was healed of his pain. No, it was more than that. He was healed of everything. He stood at the pinnacle of what could be achieved. He had the power of a god. He could reach out and mold the galaxy into whatever shape he wanted it to be. The Normandy took off through the relay like thunder being thrown. The energy left him just as quickly as it had come, leaving him renewed but also a little breathless. That felt like a round of energizing sex. And he knew what energizing sex felt like. Arya was quite the teacher in the bedroom. But he didn't get any kind of reply from his tenants. It was a little concerning since they always had something to say. Guys, you there? He asked, reaching out mentally. We're sorry, Kurama said in a formal voice that just wasn't him. The Biju you are looking for are currently not in. Please call back at a later time when we've gotten sane again. What? And around and around and around we go, Komiai sang dreamily, flying in circles upside down. Shikaka was trying to catch his own tail with no success. Get back, you taunting thing, you! Ooh, a moose! Sun exclaimed, pouncing on Matatabi. The Nibby moved out of the way and looked at the gorilla scandalized. What are you doing? It's so sudden. Sun kept chasing her, and she had to keep running. Please be considerate. Come back here, you moose. Good evening, I'm Coco, the goby introduced itself, sounding a news show host. And I'm Saiken, the rokubi introduced right alongside him. Our top story today: honey from beehives turn out to be poisonous. We'll have more for you coming up. Isabu was trying to slap out something with his tails but kept looking back at them with disappointment. Come on. You can do this. You can get the rhythm right. It's what's getting you into that talent show and onto superstardom. Here we go, one more time. Has anyone seen my slab of beef? Gyuki called out, sounding both annoyed and panicked. I need that slab of beef to make this meal. I'm sorry, but your order cannot be processed, Kurama said. Please call back at an appropriate time. I need that beef. I'll just leave you guys alone, Naruto said, slowly backing away from their consciousness. The Omega-4 relay must have been really strong if it was able to take out all 9 of them. Brace for deceleration, EDI announced. He had nothing to brace against, so all he could was keep his balance. The blue blurriness morphed into a hazy red before everything came back into focus. That focus turned out to be a literal asteroid field of ship wreckage. That's not good, Naruto shouted, instinctively ducking as a large piece came towards him. Joker had the same opinion. Oh shit! He swore. Naruto looked back up and saw the piece go right under him. He realized that Joker must have been doing his thing. He expanded the view until he saw the field in its entirety. It spread out wide but not so high. Joker, fly up! Fly up! Working on it, his pilot replied. He watched the ship tilt upwards, flying past through all the rubble. If it had been someone else flying the ship, he didn't think that they would have gotten out that way. When they reached a less clogged area of the field, he heard Joker sigh in relief and say, "Too close." Naruto looked back to the map. The collector base sat in the middle of the field. The rubble floated and spun around it like moons in orbit around a planet. The orange-red color that washed over everything came from a black hole sucking out the light of a star. But he was more interested in the rubble that they were flying above. "Joker, what is all of this?" he asked. "There are a lot of ships here." "Too many to count," Morden added. "These must be all the ships that tried to make it through the Omega-4 relay," Joker answered. "Some look ancient." "When you say ancient, do you mean from our era or from eras before?" "I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question, Commander. And truth be told, even if I was, I wouldn't want to. I have detected an energy signature near the edge of the accretion disk," EDI told them both. "Would that be the large structure-like object that doesn't look like it's been wrecked?" Naruto asked her. "If the answer's yes, I'd be willing to bet money that's the collector base." "It should probably go without saying, Commander," Joker replied. He looked at the distance between them and the base, as well as the rubble that stood between them. "Get us there, Joker. But make sure we don't die in the process." "Yes, that would be good." The ship flew towards the base, easing its way through the rubble. Naruto felt that things were going pretty good. Of course, that's when things took a turn. It was first just something that was flickering out of the corner of his eye. When he looked at it, there was nothing initially. But then he saw something moving through the rubble, coming towards the ship. Guys?" he started. EDI was already on it. "Careful, Jeff," she said. "We have company." "I see them," Thane said. "So do I," Jacob added. "These guys are moving fast if their heat emissions are anything to go by." They were too small for Naruto to see properly. He shrunk the view of the screen until he was able to see them properly. They were moving fast, and he had to keep the screen moving as well in order to keep a proper view on them. To him, they looked like probes with a menacing appearance that was cemented by the red eye in the front. "That's not all we need to worry about with them," Miranda replied. "They're firing lasers." Naruto watched as the probes fired off lasers from their eyes. They were missing the ship, but it wouldn't take them long to readjust and get a good aim, not unless something happened. "Taking evasive maneuvers," announced Joker. The ship started to twist and turn through the rubble. Naruto didn't shrink his view back to the ship because he knew it would be too confusing to make any proper sense out of it. He kept it open so he could see the probes following. They kept up their laser fire, never giving the Normandy a chance to get away. "Joker, heads up," he warned the pilot. "You've got some coming from the front." It looked like they were trying to catch the ship in a pincer move. Now they're pissing me off, Joker exclaimed in annoyance. EDI, take these bastards out. Mr. Musashi, please ready another round of torpedoes, EDI said, calm as ever. They're all set, Musashi replied. He'd probably put in the next set after he fired the first one. 2 of the probes got out in front. It seemed like they were going to open fire. Fire torpedoes, Mr. Musashi. Firing torpedoes, he replied. The twin torpedoes fired from under the ship's belly right at the probes. They were gone in under a minute. Good shot. Eric shot. Thane had a different matter to talk about. They're getting closer, he announced. Naruto saw that he was right. The probes were getting closer, and their beams were getting even closer to the ship. It didn't take long for one to scrape across the hull. He could feel his entire world rumble and shake. Report, he called. That laser just ignored all of our shielding, Ruko announced. The readings I'm getting are saying that they've taken a bit of a hit. Is there anything damaged? No, everything is still holding, Miranda answered. It's a good thing that we got the new plating. It held. More lasers incoming, Morden said, his voice still calm in spite of the situation. Naruto's world shook again as more lasers hit the ship's hull. He looked at the probes shooting from behind. There were 4 or 3, he couldn't be certain. But what he did know was that they weren't going to give up. Joker, you need to do something about these guys. They want another round? Joker asked rhetorically. Come on, girl, let's give it to them. The ship twisted suddenly downwards, going for the rebel field. The probes followed it in, still firing their lasers. 1 or 2 scrapped the ship, but the plating held and Joker's flying kept the rest of them away. He led them on a chase through the rubble, weaving in and out of everything so they wouldn't be able to get a good shot. Naruto tried tracing a path through the rubble that would get them to the base. But the probes were dead set on making sure they didn't get there in one piece. He saw one probe get out in front and hurtled right for the ship. Incoming from the front, he told the others. We've got one of them flying fast straight towards us. It smashed into the ship before he could give any orders to stop it. Alert, said EDI, hull breach on the engineering deck? It's in the cargo hold, Joker added. Musashi, Naruto said instantly, get down there and hold it off. Tali, you and Kasumi go help him. Jinchuriki, Grunt, you do the same. Acknowledged, Uzumaki-senin, Jinchuriki replied. You got it, Sensei, Grunt said. Naruto could actually hear the grin in his voice. When Musashi saw the probe thingy in the cargo hold, it was actually looking at him too. There was a paused moment as the 2 of them stared the other down. That moment was broken when he lifted his shotgun up and started shooting. The probe responded with a laser. He took one look at the red beam coming right at him and dove for cover behind some crates in the corner. The laser followed him into the corner. It couldn't reach over the top in an arc to reach him, but it could burn through the crate itself to hit him. It was just a matter of time and patience. And it was a machine. It wasn't cursed with impatience. Musashi felt the crate start to get really warm against his back, and it didn't take long for it to get hot. Is it burning through the crate? He asked himself. He then chastised himself for being stupid. Of course it was burning through the crate. He thought about trying to run out, but he knew that laser would follow him. He was stuck in a position of his own making and there was nothing he could do about it. All he could do was hope his backup was close. And it seemed like Kami or whoever it was that decided to create the galaxy was listening. He heard the cargo hold doors open and gunfire going off. Come here, you Bosch-Tet machine! Tali screamed out. I'll turn you into scrap and sell you off in a flea market. The machine turned its attention over to her and Kasumi, leaving Musashi alone. Despite the situation that had now changed, the ex-cop couldn't help but wonder. Was that supposed to be some sort of Quarian insult? Maybe it was more effective against machines than he might have thought. He pulled himself out of that musing and stood up out of cover. He saw the machine was shooting at Tali and Kasumi both, keeping them close to the doors. Hey, Tin Can! He shouted out. Forget about me? He opened fire, and it turned its attention onto him. When it did, Tali and Kasumi spread out. He moved out of his cover and kept out of the laser's path. Together, the 3 of them formed a rough triangle around the machine and poured on the firepower. They silently hoped that there was only one laser on it, and that if it tried to attack all of them, it wouldn't get anywhere. So far, it seemed like the idea was holding. It was able to shoot the laser, but they could see it coming and get out of the way. As he reloaded his shotgun, Musashi heard the cargo hold doors open again. He ended up on the far end of the hold, and so he could see who it was coming in. It was Grunt and Jinchuriki. "Are we late to this party?" Grunt asked, holding up his machine gun. "Just get in here and start shooting the damn thing," Tali ordered him. "What did you think I was doing? Having a meal?" he roared back just as he let it rip with the machine gun. Jinchuriki stepped away from the Krogan and raised its assault rifle, firing in short bursts. They spread out through the cargo hold, keeping the machines circling around and around. When it fired off the laser, the intended target got out of the way while the others kept hammering at it. It would spin around and the dance would continue on. If someone needed to reload, they would duck below cover, swap out ammo, and get right back into it. Time blurred as they fought. They didn't know how long they were fighting it. Might have been seconds or minutes. What they did know is that the machine was looking pretty hammered. Its spherical shell was riddled with bullets' holes and indentations. It jerked slightly while it moved through the air. Suddenly, it turned for the hole that it made and flew out it as fast as they could. The five of them stared out the hole, in surprise. "Did it really just do that?" Kasumi asked, lowering her submachine gun. "I think it did," Tali replied. "Why?" "Perhaps it knew that it was on its last legs?" It was a plausible thought to the Quarian. "What do you think, Jinchuriki?" she asked the Geth. "Scans indicate that collector machine was close to loss of all systems," Jinchuriki replied. "Protocol might have been placed for it to escape if ever it came to this situation." Grunt didn't really care what the Geth was saying. "Whatever the case, it's gone now," he said, staring out the hole it came in and out of. The ship suddenly shook, throwing them to their knees. "Ow!" Musashi yelled when his shoulder met a support column. "What the hell was that?" Naruto's voice spoke through the comm. "That wasn't the only probe we're dealing with here. We've got more on our ass. We're sitting ducks out here," Joker exclaimed, taking over the comm. "I have to try and lose them in the debris field." "Weren't we already in the debris field?" Tali asked. "I thought we were," Musashi said back, his words coming harsher than he had wanted them to be, thanks to the pain in his shoulder. "Layout of the debris field and Joker Pilot's words suggest that he intends to take Normandy deeper into the field," Jinchuriki offered. "Our kinetic barriers were not designed to survive impact with debris that size," Jeff Edi said. "Then I guess it's a good thing we upgraded," he replied. "We're going in." The comm fell silent. They started back towards the doors, but the ship started to tremble and shake with such a degree that they fell down again. "Ah, that stung a little bit," Kasumi groaned as she rolled onto her back. That had gotten hurt, and it made her sit up fast. "Oh. You alright, Kasumi?" asked Musashi. He was the closest to her, and saw how she landed. "I'm fine, just landed hard." "Not the first time that's happened," she added, although it's usually followed with a week-long recuperation in a hotel with a good friend. He couldn't help but laugh at that. Here they were in the middle of this suicide mission, and she was making sexual innuendos. "We get out of this alive. I'll get you a penthouse to relax," he told her. She looked over at him. "Are you offering to stay with me?" she asked, somehow managing to put on a mysterious little smile. "It's the battle that made my throat dry," he told himself. Yes, that was it, and the fact he instantly thought about a cop in CCC. Let's worry about that later and focus more on staying on alive, huh? Good point. They started to get back up and another shaking of the ship made them fall down again. Oh. Tali had been lucky when the ship started shaking, having grabbed hold of a support column. She held on to it as the ship kept shaking. She saw Grunt was curled into himself nearby against the hull. "Grunt, you okay?" she asked. He pulled his head up to look at her. "I'm fine," he replied in a growl. "I'm trying to minimize damage, and you're not helping." His bluntness was still something that she was getting used to, but Tali knew that he was saying that he was okay. "Here," she told him, lowering herself onto the column and holding out her hand. He uncurled himself and slowly stood up. He reached out to take her hand, but the ship shook again and he fell flat on his stomach. "That hurt," he declared after lying there for a couple of seconds. "Kinetic barriers at 40%, EDI announced over the comm. They didn't know if Joker had intended to reply over the comm, but they heard him say reroute non-critical power. "This is going to hurt." "What's going to hurt?" Kasumi asked. Tali reached out and pulled Grunt in towards her. As he held onto the column like her, she looked at the thief. I don't think that we want to know. But she wasn't going to have that for an answer. Naruto, she said, looking up at the ceiling, what's going on? The ship shook once more and they heard some kind of groaning from outside the hull. But they didn't any answer from the commander. Naruto! She shouted. What? I'm a little busy here, Naruto replied. He sounded very irritated at being interrupted. What's going on? Joker already said that we're flying through the debris field. His voice fell silent. Kasumi fell to the ground with another shake. She forced herself back up and decided not to push the blonde right now. It seemed like they were stuck there, in the cargo hold of a ship that was going to shake and tear itself apart forever. But eventually the shaking began to lessen and then stopped entirely. As they got back onto their feet, they waited for the next bout of shaking to hit. But it never did. Is it done? Musashi asked. I think so, Tali told him, pushing cautiously off the column. Damage report, said Joker over the comm. Kinetic barriers steady at 30%, EDI answered. No significant damage. Take the helm, EDI. Keep it slow. See if we can avoid any more attention. Pity, Grunt said with a disappointed grumble. Tali looked at the Krogan. Why do you say that? She asked him. I was hoping for more of a fight. Right, she thought to herself. Why did I even bother asking the question? Seriously, why? She was talking to a Krogan and a young one at that. I've detected an enemy heading for the cargo hold, EDI suddenly announced. What? The same machine flew back into the cargo hold. It could have been a different one since its armor was good and had no bullet holes in it. But this was the collectors they were dealing with. Who knew what they could do for repair in a few seconds? As they stared at the machine and the machine stared at them, Musashi looked over at Grunt and said accusingly, You had to open your mouth. Shut up and shoot, he replied, already beginning to spray the machine with his weapon. Everyone else joined in too. EDI, are you sure I can't view inside the ship? Naruto asked. When they had cleared the debris field, he wanted to know how the guys in the cargo hold were doing. And since calling over the comm would get them distracted and killed, he opted instead to view them. But to his surprise, he couldn't get any smaller than seeing the galaxy through the view of the ship. I am quite sure, Commander, EDI answered. Full immersion was designed to view the galaxy, not the inside of the ship. Well, that's something we need to get updated. It will never happen, Commander, Miranda told him, joining the conversation. That sounded like a challenge to him. And why's that? He asked her. Because if we did update full immersion to that degree, some degenerate would use it to spy in places that they aren't supposed to be. In spite of the situation that they were in, he couldn't help a small bubble of childish anger. Would you people stop beating me over the head with my choice of teachers? He demanded. I wasn't talking about you, Commander. I already said I was sorry, Joker said. Naruto didn't need to look inside the ship to know that his pilot was acting like Miranda's eyes were piercing the back of his skull. Miranda, not the time, he told her. Commander, I. Her voice suddenly went quiet. There was a quiet murmuring over the comm, something that Naruto wasn't quite able to decipher. Fine. That must have been Ruko, he thought to himself. He couldn't think of anyone else able to calm Miranda down so fast. His sister was surprising him more and more every day. Hey guys? Kasumi said, coming onto the comm. His attention snapped right to her. What is it, Kasumi? That machine down for the count. You're sure? Dead sure, Grunt said, Heh? Did you really have to go there, Grunt? Tali asked. Of course, he answered without shame. In any case, you guys better get back to your positions, Joker told them. He's right, Miranda agreed. We're about to clear the debris field. On our way back, Musashi told them. Naruto's attention back actively to the map, bringing it to a size where he could see both it and the base. When he had seen it on a larger scale, it had seemed smaller. But now, it was bigger, much bigger. You guys seeing this? He unconsciously asked his tenants. Where's the beef? Gyuki demanded. And around and around and around we go, Komiai still sang. Shikaka leapt for his tail, but it slipped out from under his paws. I almost had you. Get back here! It looks like Shikaku is still trying to catch his tail, Koko reported. And it also seems that Sun is still chasing Matatabi, Saiken added. Things look intense on that end. Come back here, you moose! Sun called after the Nibby. You will not defeat me with your mussiness. This all too sudden, cried Matatabi. We have barely known each other. We need to go on at least 10 dates and be with each other for at least a year. I imagine that they'll be doing this for some time. What do you have to say on this, Coco? I'd say that they've got only a month, at the most. Let's go to our special guest referee, Kurama. What do you say to all this, Kurama? I'm sorry, the fox replied. Your order for divorce papers cannot be given at this time. Please wait on the line until we can get you the papers. But if you happen to fall back in love with your partner in the meantime, congratulations. Never mind, Naruto said to them all. Forget I said anything. There it is, Miranda said over the comm the collector base. He looked to the map. The ship flew closer and closer to the base. Joker, do your thing and get in close. You got it, Commander, Joker said. Without getting attention, he added. That should go without saying, his pilot replied with heavy sarcasm. Good point, sorry. Shit! Too late, he said suddenly. Looks like they're sending out an old friend to greet us. That did not sound good. When you say old friend, are you saying? The collector's ship is back. He moved his view closer to the base. There was the ship, emerging from the base like some sort of beast coming out of its cave. Seeing it come out this way, he could see where the rocky part of the ship had come from. Oh goody, he thought to himself. First we had to deal with the tribe to get here, and now these guys again. These people do not know when to quit. He realized the irony of those words and reflexively paused, waiting for the snark from his tenants. Then he remembered that they were still deep in crazy La La Land. They weren't going to be much help. Oh shit, swore Gurus. No kidding, Musashi agreed. Things are not so bad, Eric told the two of them. Yes, Morden agreed. Fight quickly approaching, not like previous. How the hell you say that? Zaid demanded. It sure doesn't look like it from my seat, and I've got a pretty good one. He's got a point, Jacob said. We've all seen what that thing can do. We've gotten away from it before, Kasumi remarked. We're not trying to get away from it, Thane reminded her. We are trying to get past it. Which is something that we can do, Ruko declared. Right, Joker? Damn right it is, Joker agreed with a fighting spirit. I'm not going to let that fucker get another one on me. He's got a fire burning, Naruto realized. That was good. It would be something that they could use. He watched the collector's ship start to glow, and then its gun opened fire on them. But Joker wasn't caught off guard like last time. He dropped the ship under the beam and kept moving around to avoid it. Now they needed to return the favor. Joker, get a good line of sight on that ship. Grunt, stand by with the next cannon. Oh yeah, Grunt said with an appreciative growl. The ship flew closer to the enemy, angling upwards. Fire, Grunt! Joker ordered. A powerful beam fired out beneath the Normandy, and roared its way towards the collector's ship. The ship itself didn't look like it was even trying to turn. The beam slammed into the ship and tore through its hull, causing it to explode wherever the beam went. How do you like that, you sons of bitches? Joker crowed in victory. Don't celebrate yet, Joker, Naruto told him. Not until that ship is down for the count permanently. Everyone, hold on, the pilot said in warning. Gonna be a wild ride. He must have gunned the engines because Naruto saw the Normandy surge forward at a faster pace. When the collector's ship opened fire again, they flew up at such an arc that it almost looked like the ship was dancing away from it. It finished the arc and flew back at the collector's ship like a predator bearing down on its prey. When they were practically on top of the ship, Naruto gave the order. Grunt, punch a hole through them. The next cannon fired again, and this time, it went right through the collector's ship. The beam first sliced the ship in half and then destroyed anything that would even come close to it. The two sides started exploding on their own, causing more destruction of it. Naruto watched it all and felt satisfied. That ship had caused him so much trouble. He was glad to see it destroyed. He could hear the others felt the same way over the comm. But one voice cut through the celebration with a warning. Look out! Miranda shouted. As the collector's ship exploded, it also emitted a shockwave that went right through the Normandy. Suddenly Naruto's view felt unstable and wobbly. Something must have happened. Mass effect field generators are offline, Joker announced. EDI, give me something. The ship was flying right at the base without slowing down. Generators unresponsive, EDI replied. All hands brace for impact. Commander, pull out of full immersion, Miranda told the blonde. The base was getting much closer with each passing second. He started to cancel his flow of chakra to his hands. I'm Komi. The ship hit the base hard just as his chakra stopped flowing. Pain racked his body hard enough to make the Biju scream. The last thing he heard was someone calling his name before he blacked out.